And here we go.
I'm not transitioning, by the way.
You're not going to transition.
I'm happy with it.
You're not transitioning. Welcome to your homeland.
My homeland, yeah. This is my home city, of course. So it's great to be here.
Born and raised?
Born and raised in New York, of course. So,
yeah.
But it's an honor to be here in my home city, of course. The funny thing is I actually do have family here. So I mainly came here to see my family. And then while I'm here, I thought I have to do at least like one political stream or debate or something like that.
You have to with the boys. And listen.
We were actually going to get Vrillium in.
We were going to have...
He's like a funny groiper. He's like kind of a crazy guy.
I don't know why you want to do that. Explain your vision for that.
There wasn't even a vision. Like, he just wanted to debate me while I was in New York. And I was like, well, I'm debating Pisco. Do you want to join in? It can be 1v1, v1.
So you wanted like a little bit of like red meat that we could both like team up on.
Well, I'm against the groypers. Obviously, I haven't moved to the right, but I'm still like against the groypers and stuff. Right. I thought it would have been funny. A lot of people actually, I don't want to be mean, but a lot of people make fun of that guy, William, because
why?
Look, he was like a femboy. I think like he was like kind of like a e-boy or something.
What's
like
wrong with that? Why are you laughing like that?
No, I think he like made like OnlyFans content, but like for guys or something like that. And then he became right wing, and then he's like a groyper now. So a lot of people have made fun of him for that.
But you don't. You're obviously very accepting and open.
I don't care. He can do what he wants to do. I think.
Yes.
But it is funny that we're doing it in person. I'm glad that we're doing it in person.
I was like shocked because I'm gonna be honest. It was a little bit of an interesting journey. The back and forth. Somewhat on like logistics.
Oh, it's hard to.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard with the time like difference sometimes. But there was at one point like, let's do a live event. Let's do this. But like we were trying to get our schedules worked out. I'm glad everything worked out.
I did have a stupid idea where I was like, Pisco, you should do a ticketed event. And then the reason
in a week, how am I going to do it in a week?
The reason I wanted to do that is like, there's actually so many people I wanted to meet, but I just was like, it's so hard because there's just so many things to do in New York, and I had to mainly see family.
So number one was me, and number two was the groyper,
brilliant,
gay OnlyFans model.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's good to be in your home.
Someone said they look like brothers, which is funny.
We are brothers.
My brother lives in New York, and people always think he's Hispanic, which is very funny. So,
and you're not white. You agree with that, right? Do you think you're white?
Look, it's a funny thing. Like, there's actually a funny debate about this. You know what's funny, Pisco? Like, look, when I was lefty. And when I was lefty, the tankies who hated me because I was like anti-CCP and stuff like that, they would always say Drew's like a white guy who's like a racist, white privilege, blah, blah, blah. And then since I became a bit more conservative...
This is not a white man.
I don't know, look.
You're not a white man.
Look, can I say the N-word? I can't.
No,
I'm not going to do it. I'm just saying, like, if I'm rapping along to my favorite songs and stuff, I do genuinely swap out the words because I don't want to get in trouble.
You swap it out because you don't want to get in trouble? Or because
I do, because I don't want to get in trouble.
No, but like, don't you feel black? Like, you're always posting Malcolm X...
Yeah, that's true. I do. No, but well, you know what's funny? Like, legit, growing up, I'm not even taking the piss here. Growing up, for some reason, I did identify a lot with the African American experience. I loved rap music so much growing up. Like,
and that's of course why you're wearing a NASCAR jacket.
There's no political meaning here. I just found it on the street in like the East Village, and I thought it was cool, so I got it.
Speaking of the street, did you enjoy the deep cleaned subways, courtesy of our new
Zohran Mamdani?
Yes, I'll talk about it. Yeah,
this is probably one of the biggest culture shocks to me as an Australian. So, like, look, New York's the only walkable city in America. Obviously, like
the only walkable city.
Probably, right? Like, you don't really have like urbanism in other American cities, right?
I think that there's a lot of places that are certainly not walkable. You're right about that, but.
It's very car-centric, but Australia's the same. And so, it's amazing to come to New York because it's kind of like a European city in the sense that you can walk everywhere and everything. But probably the biggest culture shock to me is the extremes of wealth and poverty because, like, look, you do go onto Subway and probably a couple times, like, there's been situations where it's probably been a little bit unsafe. I'm not trying to go all law and order here, but there was a crazy time, and I'm going to write a Substack about this, but... I was at the 42nd Street station at Times Square at about midnight, going home to the hotel, and this guy was on the platform, and he was like he was obviously like very mentally disturbed. He was sort of like lunging around. He was acting very erratically. He was ripping down posters off the wall and sort of like lunging across and he was only a couple yards away from me. And he sort of turned around, and I saw this massive kitchen knife down the back of his pants, and I walked off the platform because
you should write for the New York Post. I mean, that's pretty much every week's story.
Actually, I tried to contact the journalist, and everyone's like, "No, that happens all the time here, Drew." But it is kind of strange. Look, I think that is probably one of the most culture shock things in Australia. Like, I don't know, sorry, in America, the culture shock,
poor and homeless people.
The extreme levels of homelessness, and the fact that sometimes the Subway seems to basically be like a sort of de facto homeless shelter.
Got it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that, like, sometimes then you get like guys who are like aggressive or like physically intimidating and stuff. Like that is like very difficult. So,
but Zoran says he has a plan. He's going to try to make housing more affordable for New Yorkers and going to try to address the.
God bless.
And
we love Zoran Kwame Mandani. Look.
You went pretty hard against him. Look, I still see you putting some stuff out there.
The thing is, though, Pisco, like, I think when it comes to the homelessness situation in New York City, like, obviously, like, a big part of it is poverty and it is hard to get a place and everything. But at the same time, though, like, some of the people that are homeless on the subway, they clearly need, like, very strong mental help. Like, they need to be in a mental institution. And, like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know necessarily what the solution is, but they, like, if they need healthcare, they need, like, to be in a hospital. And look, even though I'm, like, more conservative and everything, I still believe in public healthcare. We've got that in Australia. I support that. So, yeah.
So you're not necessarily on the basis, because there are some people who say, for example, Zoran Mamdani, his socialist policies.
No, that's not why I don't like, that's not, like, I'll be honest, like.
It's because he's a Muslim.
No. I'll go into it. But listen, like, I actually... Like, his economic stuff, I don't care that much about. Like, opening 3 grocery stores, fair enough. Free bus care, like the reason I'm opposing Zoran Kwame Mandani, it's not because I don't want New Yorkers to have, like, free buses. Like, I don't care about that.
Yeah,
like,
so why are you opposing him?
Well, look, I do think he does have a history of extreme radicalism, like, where, you know, for 10 years, he was, like, a very, very left-wing activist. A very, very left-wing activist.
True. But you don't hold that against some right-wingers.
Maybe he's moderated recently, but... Like, if you look at his sort of history, he's not somebody... Look, if you ask Zoran Kwame Mandani, like...
Why do you keep saying that?
Just because it's like a Fox News meme thing. Yeah. They always get Kwame. No, but if you asked Zoran, like, 2 years ago, like, are you proud to be an American or whatever? Like, he probably would have said no. Like, I think he's got, like, I think he's very negative about the overall sort of American project. I think he buys into, like, the whole, this is stolen land, it's genocidal, all this stuff. Like, it's that sort of, like... It's the frame, I use the term, it's half joking when I use the term, but I use the term sort of race communism. And it's kind of like this part where it's like they really don't like the Western world, they really don't like white people, it seems. Like, you know, when he was talking...
You don't think Zoran likes white people?
Look, he got a lot of support from white people, that's obviously true. Yeah. But, I mean, he was out there on the campaign saying, we want to tax white neighborhoods. And he could have just said, I'm going to tax rich neighborhoods. He explicitly said white neighborhoods,
Well,
right?
He didn't say it, it was part of the policy... it was in the policy.
Well, yeah,
no doubt.
He put that in the policy.
And that was a mistake. But, like, let's be real.
And you also have to admit as well, like, there were, like, 2 people he's appointed who have history where they were saying crazy shit, where they were like, we have to destroy white middle-class wealth.
The thing is, what I take issue with, and we are going to step back in a second, introduce Drew a little bit, and we're going to talk about his journey, and then we'll get into the issues that we disagree with. What I take issue with, though, is that this is a level of purity testing that I don't see you apply to people with sordid pasts or controversial statements from the other side. You know, you can find all manner of degenerate scumfuck in the current administration, but you don't spend all your time talking about how the administration is catering to these people. For example, famously, right, JD Vance is saying, let the kids in the door who say all these, like, explicitly racist and anti-Semitic things in group chats.
I disavow all that. I disavow that. And listen, like, obviously I do have a history criticizing Trump a lot. Like, I was a big, I was a huge Trump opponent until, like, 6 months ago. Like, it's a complex journey that I'll discuss.
Yes.
Like, and I don't agree with everything. For example, I strongly disagree with the Greenland policy. I think Greenland policy is horrible. And I don't agree with everything about ICE, for example, the tactics they use. I think in general they do need to have border security. They do need to deport people who are illegally in the country, but the way they've done it is bad, probably. Like, so I'm not completely uncritical. Yeah. I'd say it's critical support in the sense that I just don't like...
So you would consider yourself a Trump supporter in that sense?
I would say extremely critical support. Like, okay. It's simply that, look, the reality is, Pisco, and this is what I'll describe, but essentially, for 5 years, communists have basically said, we want to murder you, Drew Pavlou. And so after a while, I'm like, okay, I'm an anti-communist, and I'm going to support people who are against communism.
That's a kind of unprincipled
Not really,
stance, right?
Not really, because if there's a political side that basically wants to kill me and destroy my life and destroy my family.
No, it's understandable, but when I say it's understandable, I just mean, like, that's a very human thing to happen. But, like, just because communists or a particular side that, you know,
I just hate the far left a lot. I hate the far left, and I've got reason to do it because I've literally been swatted. It's like a trauma response to being swatted and 5 years of
trauma.
Death threats.
In some sense, is almost definitionally irrational. At least when you say that it informs.
But to a certain degree, it's actually just to a certain degree, Pisco. Okay, like you don't like the Trump administration.
Oh no, yeah, no.
And yeah, of course. And the reason you hate the Trump administration is because you believe that like Trump wants to hurt people that you love. And it's the same way. Like I can't support the Democrats because I believe that the Democrats, or the equivalent of like the Democrats in Australia, like the left, they want to hurt people that I love. Like
I can tell you why. And after this, we'll get into your journey because I think it's an interesting one. Because how I first learned of you was because people would post your like edgy lib tweets, right?
I was a liberal.
Yes.
But I was like an edgy liberal though.
Like an edgy liberal who had some pretty like unapologetic, like a version of just memery.
I was like an anti-woke liberal.
Like kind of an anti-woke liberal,
Yeah.
sort of in the mold, in some ways, I would say a mix of how Destiny sometimes interacts, Kyle Kalinske with his tweets sometimes. So there was like an edginess to it, and there was a kind of like base libness that from a distance, not knowing you and never met you, I would sometimes see like a funny meme that you would say that made me laugh. And so why do I dislike the Trump administration? I think the principal reason is because they stand in opposition to everything I thought that you and I shared, at least when I first interacted with you. But as I'm learning more and more, I think that that's not the case, or at least it's not the case anymore. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about currently, how do you see yourself politically? Do you use any label? And talk to me about your political journey. Go ahead.
Look, I would describe myself as a conservative. And I think it's actually a psychological shift. So when I was a progressive, I believed that you could, and I spent 10 years as a progressive. My introduction to politics was the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2015. I was a Bernie bro. I was literally a Bernie bro for like many years. I'd sit at the back of the classroom I was like 15, so it was like grade 11. And I'd sit at the back of the classroom and just like literally obsessively pore over the returns in every single state and plot out how Bernie's campaign could win and stuff like that. I was one of the guys who like literally like, here's how Bernie can still win. I was like devastated when he lost.
And this was, so you're younger guy.
When I was 15, 16,
16, yeah.
Yeah, and then when he lost, I was like very devastated, and for a time I kind of like became like, I guess, like a sort of moderate liberal in the sense that like I actually supported Hillary, and I was like, okay, like the problem was that Bernie was too radical and we've got to be more centrist and everything. And I guess I was there for a couple years. And I think just the problem is like, obviously, like, look, we live in a world where there are major political events every week at this point.
Yep.
Like
especially now in the current administration.
It's like the famous Lenin quote, there are some, there are weeks where decades happen.
Yep.
And
nice, you got there. I was. Is it months?
I've probably butchered that slightly, but we're living through immense times historically, and like, look,
it's weeks. You were right. It looks like,
but I'm updating based in response to what I see, right? And it's almost like a psychological shift. When I was 15 and 16, I believed like we could perfect the world. We can have we can create a perfect world. I believe it's possible that we can perfect society if we just, if America has universal public health, and I still believe in public health care and everything, but if America has universal public health care and it does, change...
So can we pause right there? So what you're saying is you thought your prior beliefs were in some sense naive. Is that right?
I'll try to explain it a bit.
Or a little bit idealistic.
I believe that the world was perfectible. I believe that you could create utopia on the earth, essentially.
And we now live in like a fallen state.
That's how I see it. It's like after years of, the Russian invasion of Ukraine was shattering for me. The way that, the Hassan Pikers of the world sort of just joked around about it and took the piss out of it and everything. Going forward, like, I had years of people on the left, showering me in death threats, and I was swatted multiple times, and I was arrested on false grounds, and all these sorts of things. And just my view of human nature darkened when you are constantly in sort of fight and flight mode, and people are constantly like literally saying, like literally every day, Pisco, I log onto Twitter and there are people like literally like, we're gonna fucking murder Drew Pavlou. If you...
They say that about Will Stancil too.
Sure.
They say that about Will Stancil.
Yeah. But all I'm saying though, right, is it's like my view of human nature darkened. And instead of thinking like we can perfect the world, I'm like,
so no, Putin won.
Putin
won. I just want to say real quick, it sounds Putin was successful in getting you to lose belief for democracy and your ideals.
No, I still believe in democracy. All I'm saying though is, I believe that you basically have to have a Lee Kuan Yew style approach to democracy, where you have to have very tough law and order crime policies. I don't believe that you can have basically open border, and I think it's actually so much harder to assimilate people than I previously imagined. That part of it as well was October 7 was a huge thing for me, where I had all these friends who I regarded as friends, and suddenly they're celebrating like the massacre of like 1,200 Jews. And I saw all the images that day, piles and piles of dead bodies, civilians It was horrific to me, and I saw all these people who I regarded as my friends going, "This is what decolonization looks like. This is what decolonization looks like." And then in the next breath, they're like, "We want to decolonize America. We want to decolonize Australia. We want to decolonize." And it's like, okay, like past a certain point, my view of human nature has darkened, and I believe that there is a radical fringe on the left that unfortunately is no longer as fringe as it once was. Like, unfortunately, I believe that tanky bullshit has infected a lot of the center left.
And in America, is that your observation? Because
look, even in America, because like, look at the Maduro. We'll talk about the Venezuela thing. There are a lot of mainstream Democrats who are like, no, how dare you touch Maduro? And Maduro was one of the most disgusting dictatorships in the entire world.
Hang on a second. I just want to take issue with that. You're not really seeing that from mainstream Democrats.
I mean, Chuck Schumer. There were a lot of Democrats who, like, a lot of senators, a lot of Democrats, top Democrats who said this is fundamentally an illegal act. It's fundamentally wrong.
Well, but that could be correct, Drew.
I know you're going to say that it's illegal.
Well, I do think it's illegal, but
here's the thing.
But hang on. But that is different. I just want to chart out the difference there, because I would agree if there was widespread sentiment among Democrats in support of Maduro, I would find that concerning. But
someone said get ICE to deport Drew because he's working in the USA in violation of truth. He's like, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not getting paid to go on Pisco's stream. I'm just sitting here.
Yes, this is a social invitation. But don't worry about that.
I know.
So if I look to my left and I look to my right and I saw a bunch of people who are standing Maduro, I would be concerned. If I look to my left and look to my right and saw a bunch of people standing Vladimir Putin or something, or Xi Jinping, I would be concerned.
But there are a lot.
We'll get there. We'll get there to the H man. We'll get to the H man. Don't worry. But
not just to Sampai, but yeah.
Okay. But I look to my left and I look to my right, and I don't see Democrats standing Maduro. I look to my left and I look to my right, and I see them saying things that I think are true, namely that it's concerning Trump's use of power, and that Maduro is a bad guy. The leadership of the Democrats in both congressional houses and practically to a person throughout the country condemned Maduro as a tyrant and as a thief of the election in Venezuela. And so I don't know what you're talking about when you say you see tankyism infect the Democratic Party or the center left in America. What are you talking about?
I mean, there are major elected Democratic officials like Zoran Bamdani, who's increasingly the sort of like leader of the left of the Democratic Party. Who
you view him as the leader of
I think
Democrats, or
no of the left of the left wing of the Democratic Party, probably like a co-leadership type role with AOC, and they were very strongly against the operation to remove Maduro. And let me say this, right? Okay, I understand. Yes, there's no congressional authorization. There's 2 points in relation to that. One, the US has not declared war since like literally 1945. The second thing as well is the Biden administration put a bounty on.
We'll get there. I want to get there, but I just want to talk about the claim regarding the tankyism. I want to get there. And I know you have a lot of good ideas to talk about with respect to the legality and the wiseness of the intervention. I want to get there, but the first part, I want to chart your political journey. And I think part of what you're explaining to me is not something unfamiliar to a lot of different people, which is your feelings of humanity and the people around you and your groups shift. And part of that is your describing of this like growing radicalism among certain people who you once considered friends and people who you considered like, I don't know, colleagues. But I'm just wondering where that is among the center left in America, for example. I don't see it. So maybe you see something. Maybe it's there. Look, I'm not seeing it.
Look, all I know is like literally 2 days ago, I was walking down the street in like the Upper East Side, which is like a wealthy area and everything. Nice. And there were massive posters that said, return Maduro to America, return Maduro to Venezuela, free him, etc., etc. And I've seen, I'm not even kidding here, like I've seen pro-Maduro stuff all across New York City. Like, it's there. It exists. We just literally prior to this this debate, I went out to the Brooklyn MDC, you know, the actual place, and walking down the street, there were Maduro stickers and everything, and it's not even just Maduro. Like Luigi Mangione was a big one for me as well. Like I just instinctually look at a guy shooting a guy in the back, and I agree that the healthcare system in America is fucked, but I just view the act of shooting somebody in the back as they're walking down the street as horrific.
But the thing is, for Luigi Mangione, I
think
it's horrific.
I
did see a lot of it, and I'm going to be honest. I'm not a liar. I'm not going to tell you that I haven't even seen it among some people in my social circle. All right, so there are some people who are like, "Fuck," you know. I don't really care about Luigi, and I think that's horrific.
Drew, is it right to rape a rapist? What the
Stop! Okay, don't get distracted. Don't get distracted. But that's on the right too. The right response to Luigi Mangione. I'm not talking about any of these other shootings because those exist as well in terms of fuck around, find out, and we can also talk about the ICE shooting at some point. But for Luigi Mangione specifically, when you asked right-wing people, there was a great deal of sympathy. So I'm not seeing the symmetry breaker.
Look,
I'm not seeing the symmetry breaker.
Okay, here's the funny thing. If you actually looked at Luigi Mangioni's past statements, I think it was what was the platform that he was active on? It, or even just his Goodreads, like he was reading Peter Thiel's books and stuff like that. So a lot of people made the point that like he didn't actually necessarily seem to be an out and out leftist. Like he kind of seemed to be kind of like almost like a disaffected tech bro, right winger sort of. He didn't really have like a consistent ideology. But at the end of the day, though, which side really held him up as a banner of? Like I know, for example, in Australia, the main sort of like left-wing activist group in Australia, the Victorian Socialists, who now have this sort of political party called the Australian Socialists, they're sort of the vanguard of the Australian left. Like they held like massive sympathy discussions and posts in support of him and everything. And I knew a lot of people in my social circle. Like I can give you an example. Like there's this girl that I knew who I knew from university. Literally works for a senior judge, like graduated from law school, works for a senior judge.
So a serious person.
Like serious person who's like just like a normal, who you would think is just a normal center left person. They were trying to debate with me going like, oh, Luigi's a hero. And I'm like, but I know that if you saw somebody shot in front of you, you would cry. And so there's a lot of, look, you're right that there's a lot of like these kind of like, oh, of course, you're right on the right. There's there's
bloodlust on both sides.
I agree. And the what's the term for it? It's like the opposite of virtue signaling. It's vice signaling. There is vice signaling on the right.
That's the Richard Hanania stuff.
Look, there is vice signaling on the right. And look, I will say, I did actually think people like outright celebrating Renee Good's shooting was disgusting. I did think that, look, I never want to see anybody shot like that. It was horrible. I did think that she created a dangerous situation by driving forward towards the officer. I do think
we can get there.
We can get there, right? We can talk about it later. I want to say though, like, to clarify, like at the fundamental basis of it, I do think it's a tragedy. I don't think anyone should ever be shot like that. And I see your point that there were a lot of right wingers who like actually full on had bloodlust with that, and that was wrong.
Taking the temperature like this and seeing where like sentiment shifts with respect to these extremist events, if it exists on both sides, and I'm going to be honest with you, Drew, I don't think that there's a reasonable empirical case that we can make at this moment that the left wing in this country is more radical than the right wing in this country. That's going to be an empirical case to make. Maybe in your circle that you see more, but again, the algorithm is not necessarily showing you what's real. But let me just finish this point. I think what's better as a metric to judge our political allies isn't these kinds of like responses on social media. It would seem to me to be a better way to do it is to look at policies, look at platforms, and the ideas that like the thought leaders are trying to show off. But why is that not your focus?
Look, here's the interesting thing. If you actually ask me on a range of policy questions, I still agree with like a lot of, center left sort of, things like, for example, public healthcare. I support that, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult because look, there are two fundamentals where I really strongly disagree. I think increasingly, even the center left in America basically view all immigration enforcement as illegitimate, like almost all of it.
Really?
And I think a lot of it is. Like people, it's very mainstream now to say abolish ICE. It's very mainstream. You had Bill Kristol saying that.
But I
Bill Kristol, a former neocon, saying that.
But I support it now, not because I don't support law enforcement, not because I don't think that there ought to be immigration enforcement, but because of the consistent, flagrant abuses by this agency against the things that I value most, which are our liberties, right? The thing that you and I are supposed to love, right? What makes us different than China? That we both do not like the Chinese Communist Party. I don't like these authoritarian regimes. What separates us from Putin? It is the removal of arbitrary power, the imposition of checks and balances, and the protection of freedoms. So you ask, how can I support abolish ICE? Well, I'm doing it on the grounds that I think that you and I should be like aligned with, which is the protection of our societies. And if we don't do that, right, even when it's costly and even when it bothers certain people who otherwise like deserve a punishment, right? If we do that, if we just give up our institutions and our democracy, then we're gonna turn around one day and we're gonna live in China, or we're gonna be living in Russia, and we won't know when we gave up our democracy. So that's why I'm so concerned with this sort of ends justification on immigration or like intervention.
Look, I agree with you. I don't want to have anybody govern arbitrarily. I still want the separation of powers. I think Trump should respect court decisions, etc., etc. I don't want anybody to govern without, recourse to the law. I still support the rule of law. Trump did campaign on deportations. He is implementing something that the majority of Americans did vote for. I agree that the tactics are not the right way. I think ICE officers should show badges. I think they shouldn't go around masked. But at the same time, there are far left agitators who are threatening them, and they have the far left advocates in Minneapolis. In Minneapolis at the moment, like it's getting very dangerous because they are increasingly. I think it's almost. I think it's a matter of time before they try to kill an ICE agent. There was already an incident early last year when there was a guy who was trying to shoot at ICE agents. He actually killed the illegal immigrants or something like that with them. It's getting very dangerous, and there is radicalism on both sides there. I agree that I should show badges and shouldn't go around masked up. They shouldn't be a law unto themselves. But Americans did vote as a majority for deporting illegal immigrants.
But they voted for someone to be the president of the United States. I agree that they voted for increased immigration, or deportation, I should say, sorry. And Trump is doing some of that within the bounds of the law.
Would there be anything that you would accept? Like, is there any scenario where you would accept increased levels of deportations?
Of course. Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, I supported Obama's efforts in with respect to his concentration on criminal people with criminal convictions.
Would you?
And he had high levels of deportation.
Look, fair enough. Would you condemn?
Wait, no. Can we just
can I ask one question
on Biden as well? Yeah. People act as though Democrats are these doves on immigration. Let's not forget it was Bill Clinton who passed IRA, a massively onerous law on immigration. It was a lot of Barack Obama deporter.
That now.
I do too, because I think it's stupid law for many different reasons. But
so you're bringing it up as a
no. But no, it's to show you that the narrative is fucked. I disagree with Bill Clinton on a lot of things, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But on that law specifically, I do. But what I'm trying to fight against is this characterization of Democrats as saying we don't want any border enforcement whatsoever. It's not true, or any immigration deportation. Bill Clinton, massive immigration reform. Barack Obama, known as the deporter in chief by Piers Morgan.
A lot of leftist activists hated Obama for that.
Joe Biden had a bit of a different set of circumstances. He had more turnaways at the border because he was deploying different authorities under health emergency stuff during COVID,
but it obviously
just turned people away.
But it did spike though under Biden.
It did spike, but that wasn't because Biden wanted it to happen, right? What I think you should be aware of by now is that correlation doesn't mean causation. Just because Joe Biden presided over a massive increase in immigration doesn't mean he wanted that, and doesn't mean that he didn't enforce the law.
There's reporting by the New York Times that showed that they were worried about the activist wing of the Democratic Party going against them if they went hard at the border. There's reporting by the New York Times inside the Biden administration. They were worried about that. And I wanted to ask as well, like you say that there is a scenario where you could support, people democratically enforcing, the verdict of the voters, which is that they want to have more.
No, subject to the pre-existing laws and subject to the Constitution, right? You don't vote for a president without those constraints. That every election, I just want to be clear about where I stand on this. Every election for president of this country isn't without constraint. We voted for this president with constraints. And so it's, I think, preposterous for someone to say, well, they voted for it.
I'm not saying that Trump should have no constraints.
I know, but they voted for a president with constraints. And so when a president operates outside of those constraints, he's not keeping his bargain to his voters, because the assumption of the voter has to be that he's operating within the constitutional framework. And to the extent that the voter assumed differently, then fuck that voter.
Okay. Two things here. Like, look, again, I say to you that Trump needs to respect the Constitution. I'm not advocating for any extra constitutional steps. All I'm saying is that what I would like to see happen is the will of the voters, which is the Democratic majority wanted to have, lower illegal immigration. I would like to see that democratic decision respected. I agree that the exact tactics that they've gone about are wrong, and I would like to see them go about with proper identification and without masks and stuff like that. You have to admit that there are a lot of radicals threatening ICE. They have attempted to murder ICE agents over the past year.
It's happened. Radical when you say there's a lot of murder attempts on ICE,
I mean, there was like a terrorist attack on ICE.
Yes, there was. There have been assaults and violence, and even what I would call definitional insurrections that occurred at some points in time.
I'm
honest and fair. I will acknowledge that.
Can I ask you? Would you condemn? Like, there is an aspect of democratic sort of urban politics in a lot of these big cities. As part of the sort of safe sanctuary cities policy, they have a sort of standing policy to basically deny ICE access to jails, access to people who are actually facing charges.
Who could support ICE in this context? Now, you're saying pre this administration, were there also some sanctuary cities? Yes, but that is just a state operating as sovereign. You guys have states in Australia too.
Yeah, of course. But do you think it's right that, like for example, people have criticized ICE because they say, well, they're going beyond just getting criminals. They're going across the streets, etc. But there is this standing policy by a lot of democratic administrations across the country to deny access deny ICE access to sort of like local... And I was shocked when I found that. I was like, so there are literally guys in jail facing charges of murder and ICE can't deport them. Like, that is pretty crazy.
So first of all, it's a minority system in this country. It's vastly overstated the amount of quote unquote sanctuary jurisdictions. And under this administration, no, I don't condemn it, because who could cooperate with ICE in this context? ICE, who is now going to like a green card citizenship swearing-ins, I should say, and the granting of these different like reliefs.
Is that really true? Because like,
yes, it's true.
I want to say, right, like I had a lot, like when I was coming to America, I had a lot, there's like a lot of stuff in the Australian press where they're going to check at the border, they're going to force you to open your phones and go through your social media. I like literally walked off the plane and walked into the airport and just got in. Like, it was really easy. Like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure. Obviously, people have different...
That's not what I'm saying. I'm
just saying in general, like, I don't know. I was talking to like a family member, right? And they were like, and they've like legally migrated to the United States. And they were like, I was asking them like, you know, was it difficult, the green card process, all this sort of stuff? And they were like, to be honest, it wasn't. So I don't know. Like, there's a lot of conflicting narratives here.
There are different situations for people in different circumstances.
Yeah, obviously, I agree.
And like, it's not just some people who come from countries where Trump has a better relationship. Australia is one where
fair enough.
I think Albanese, to his credit, you should be thanking him, though you hate him, has done his best. Even though I assume he fucking hates Trump.
Yeah, he does personally. Yeah, it's obvious.
To manage the relationship between your two countries such that we're not talking about taking over Australia and that the people coming from Australia are treated relatively well.
Fair enough,
all else equal. In fact, some of the bad stuff they're doing in other areas for other countries and in other circumstances is actually unloading and offloading some responsibilities to help like the preferred places from more Anglo countries. Think, you know, South Africa, think fucking Australia, think these other countries that are deemed to be not from the third world. You remember that unhinged, well, I don't know if you think it's unhinged after your conversion with Richard Spencer, which I want to get to. I want to get to that at some point.
Richard Spencer's actually like more liberal than me. He like supports he supports Kamala Harris. He supported Biden. He supports the Democrats. Like, Richard Spencer's like literally a supporter of
on race.
Oh no, like, well, he's obviously more right wing to me than me on race, but I think he's even against ICE though. Like, I'm pretty sure Richard Spencer.
Okay, but
someone's gonna clip that up and be like, "Oh, that means Drew's a Nazi." Like, I'm not talking about Richard Spencer like 10 years ago. Obviously, Richard Spencer 10 years ago was like actually a Nazi and stuff. But I'm pretty sure even now, like, Richard Spencer's against ICE. He condemned the shooting of Rene Good. Like, I think in a lot of ways he's kind of. I mean, he probably has some weird views still on race. I don't know. I don't know the whole thing. Possibly. I've had one conversation with him.
I want to get to the conversation about the third world about this focus of yours. I do want to get there, but overall, we can have some disagreements on policies, right? But the basis on which I would say abolish ICE, or that I would oppose ICE, or the basis on which I would oppose the intervention in Venezuela, in addition to some areas of like actual genuine disagreement that you and we can be two reasonable people, non-tankies, and disagree on those things. It's on grounds of like civil rights, liberties, democracy, the structure of our government. And all I want to say is these are honest disagreements that people can have. And just because someone takes the view of abolish ICE on this basis, or, you know, no intervention in Venezuela, doesn't mean they're a tanky fuck.
Well, look, I don't think you're a tanky.
Okay.
We're obviously having a respectful conversation, stuff like that. It's when in person.
Where is it on the center left? In the
what
center,
would you say?
Among politicians, it doesn't exist really. I mean, even
I would say Zoran is the prime example of somebody
what is he's doing that's tanky.
No, he's not doing anything that's tanky necessarily, but I think he has tanky sympathies.
On the basis of what?
On the basis of like he called up Trump and said, "I don't want you to do what you did to Maduro." Like he's not basing it on the fact that, oh, you know, I'm worried that Trump violated the Constitution. Or
the hell he's not. Why would you say that he's not?
I think
it
he genuinely
could be on interventionist grounds too, because
because his supporters like Maduro.
You think that Democrats support Maduro?
Dude, there are so many. Like, okay, go onto TikTok right now and search Zoran's name, and literally all the top ones are like communists ironically supporting Zoran. And they're like putting like
Maduro or Zoran?
On Zoran. But it's like there are all these like Zoran, hammer and sickle edits. All the leftists love him. Like, I think he honestly was against Zoran because I think Zoran was against Maduro because a lot of his base thought that like Maduro is this socialist country in Latin America that's been
Democrats
oppressed by
are against the intervention. Because we're against it. Because who could be in favor of Trump's escalating?
Who could be in favor of it? Like, the majority of the Venezuelan people, according to polling, could be in favor of it. No, like, that's actually the reality of it.
I totally support Maduro being ousted. Yeah. What I disagree with is the policy that Trump implemented, which isn't independent of how he executes the ouster of Maduro.
The problem is, I think it's easy for you and a lot of Democrats to be like, okay, we want him gone, but we just don't want to do anything about it. Because like the reality is, like, there's no other way to get rid of Maduro. They got rid of him. I was talking to a Venezuelan guy like literally an hour ago, and he was saying, like, before Maduro's ouster, I rated the chance of the regime collapsing at 5% over the next couple of years. I now rated about 60%. That was a Venezuelan guy that I was talking to. Every single Venezuelan person I know has celebrated so much.
I'm going to sound a little bit insensitive here. Actually, I'll go another tack with you.
Okay.
And we're not going to shit on people. Why isn't this like sort of unending sympathy and respect for humanitarian concerns active at a time when millions of Venezuelans were fleeing Maduro's regime to try to seek asylum in
I
this
actually
country?
have sympathy.
Where was the love for the Venezuelan people fleeing this communist tyrant
Let me
in
explain.
Venezuela when they were begging to be in the United States and to plead for political asylum?
I actually genuinely think that Venezuelan anti-communist refugees should be, protected.
But Trump said fuck you, and Trump supporters said fuck you. They all go, even if you arrive
again,
to
I don't
our
agree with
border,
every single thing that Trump's ever done.
they shat on Biden for having an orderly process by which to try to judge these new. You ask why?
Look,
why was there? So I'm gonna finish this.
Yeah.
You ask why is there this like wave of immigration that occurred during the Biden years? One of the reasons was the economic catastrophe of Venezuela, causing millions of people to flee the country. That wasn't in Biden's control, but when they came here. And when they came here begging for relief, either from the economic depravity of communism or political, either through the colectivos or through the regime itself, there was a cold shoulder by MAGA. They didn't care.
I
they don't
disagree
give
with
a fuck about it.
Look, I disagree with MAGA on that.
It is the height of, in my opinion, not necessarily of you, but to hear them appeal to the sensibilities and humanitarian concerns of the Venezuelan people.
Two things here.
Bullshit.
Okay, two things here. One, I don't actually, as I've said, I don't agree with MAGA on everything. I actually think anti-communist refugees from like Vietnam, Venezuela, if you're anti-communist, I like you. So I think that's like one of the few areas that I agree with immigration, right? I support anti-communists, fleeing communist regimes. The second thing is, it actually is internally consistent. I'm not endorsing this approach, but it is internally consistent to say we don't necessarily, we're going to try and change the situation in Venezuela so people stop coming to our country because we don't want them to come to our country.
But it's also internally consistent to say we want to support the Venezuelan people overthrowing Maduro, but we want to do so legally. Both are internally consistent.
Okay, what is the legal way to? Okay, can I ask you this? Right?
By Congress.
Okay,
that it's hard, but that's something you could do.
When Biden put in place a $30 million bounty on Maduro's head.
How is that inconsistent?
Well, like the idea of a bounty is that somebody can go out and go get Maduro, right?
Not every. Just because there's a bounty doesn't mean that.
I got a really good point. I've got a really good point here. Okay, Obama's operation to get Osama bin Laden, technically had the exact same legal authority as Trump's operation against Maduro.
No,
that's true. Okay, that is true.
No, it's not.
Was there an act of Congress to get?
Yes.
To go, okay, you could make the same arguments that you've breached international law by violating Pakistan's sovereignty. They didn't alert the Pakistanis.
I'm not saying as a matter of international law, though. I'm not so sure that it would be the case that this would violate international law to do the intervention in Pakistan. But I'm not talking about that with respect to when I talk about the legality. It's not just the international law principles, which at this point everyone should concede those are being violated. Like at this point. There's not even a pretense that we care about international law.
My view is that international law, unfortunately, was destroyed by
Putin.
Look, it's unenforceable, and Putin literally destroyed the international order when he invaded Ukraine. And
in 2014, or
in 2014, yeah. And Obama basically that was a major mistake by Obama, where he just basically allowed the sort of de facto annexation of Crimea. And
what did you want him to do? Go to war with Russia?
No, but they could have pressed far harder. Look at
like Trump is doing now, pressing hard on Putin.
No, like Biden did. I fully supported Biden's Ukraine policy, and I like Biden's Ukraine policy. Honestly, like Obama should have done what Biden did, where he fully armed the Ukrainians and helped them fight it back. It's a sad thing, and I just think, like, unfortunately, yeah, you know this as well as I do. International law is unenforceable. All
right, so let's not talk about international law.
Anyway, let's go.
But I think it's relevant.
What was the legal authority though for Barack Obama?
The authorization of use of military force after 9/11 to go after Al Qaeda specifically.
But you know as well as I do that there were a lot of civil liberties people who were really against that type of authorization because they thought it was too broad. So, for example, ACLU hated that shit.
But with the AUMF specifically, I'm not sure about that. Whether some actions taken with respect to the AUMF and other stuff from that era, Patriot Act, certain activities by the NSA, yeah. But just because,
can I ask you a question?
Let's just deal with the specific. There was congressional authorization to go after Bin Laden, trivially so. He was the head guy of the attack, which in response we passed the AUMF 4.
Okay, fair. Look, fair enough. At the same time, though, like you had a previous Democratic administration literally put a bounty on the head of Maduro to either kill or capture him, and like
that's not congressional authorization, Drew.
Look, there's as I said earlier, there's not been congressional authorization for war. I mean, there's not been a declaration of war since like 1945.
I think that Obama violated this. I think that Clinton violated it.
I think Obama violated, but I'm actually not worried about him violating. So, for example, I know that there is a lot of lefties who like.
You're not worried about it because you're not worried about the encroaching threat of power.
Remember when there were all those lefties who hated Obama over the drone stuff, and they would.
Yeah.
See, I think Obama's overall approach to defeating ISIS was actually the correct one, and like I have no problem. I want to ask you this question, right?
Yeah.
You know, Anwar al-Awlaki, who was an American citizen, but literally one of the top Al-Qaeda operatives.
Yeah.
And the United States government under Obama assassinated him extrajudicially. I've got no problems with that. He was one of the top Al-Qaeda guys, even though he was an American citizen.
Extrajudicially, but I think legally. Just because they...
To be honest, my approach, my actual thinking about the Anwar al-Awlaki cases, I actually think it's probably illegal, but I still support it because he was a top Al-Qaeda guy.
I don't think it was illegal.
Was it? He was an American citizen. He was like, can you kill an American citizen without
in some cases,
a trial?
yes. Yeah. So think about the American Civil... So easy example, American Civil War. Do you think it was illegal for Abraham Lincoln to order the Union to go kill Confederates in a bunker?
I mean, yeah. Look, that's a good point.
You think it was illegal? No. There are some, and it's a kind of similar.
But you can you could basically say, okay, like in a way, Pisco, you're almost making this sort of Smithian argument where, like, well, if there's a state of exception, you can sort of.
I'm not saying that just in the notion of a state of exception. I'm saying
because I think, for example, there's a state of exception when there's like Anwar al-Awlaki, who's a senior Al-Qaeda operative. There are a lot of civil liberties lawyers in America who hated that shit so much.
I'm not saying that there's a state of exception. I'm saying that there's specific authorization for that conduct, both in the Civil War context and also in the context of Anwar al-Awlaki. That it's not an exception. It's the fact that the rule itself contains instances in which you're allowed to use deadly force because it's authorized. You know, that's the case also in the argument, though I don't grant it in the Renee Good shooting. You don't need to say that there's a state of exception if you were to grant that the shooting was justified, because according to the normal rules of use of either military force in the context of al-Awlaki or civilian deadly force in the context of Renee Good, we're abiding by the rules, assuming that you thought it was justified. So I don't buy this kind of like state of exception. I think that the Constitution and the United States system should not have like a turn off mode. That's the mode of thinking. That's the mode of thinking of a tanky, right? What separates us from a tanky? A tanky doesn't care about civil liberties, doesn't care about procedure, doesn't care about order. That's what makes us better than them.
I still support the Constitution.
Not if you think it should be violated.
Okay, but I don't think I think it's a bit of a silly thing to be like the Maduro snatch operation is going to itself destroy the Constitution.
I'm not saying it's going to destroy the Constitution.
Because there were people who argued that there were people.
Hang on, I didn't say it's going to destroy the Constitution. I think the Constitution is a firm document. It's creaking right now. Trump is trying to mess with it. I mean, he's openly floating not having midterms. The dude is violating civil liberties.
I don't think that's serious. I genuinely don't think that's serious.
You say that now, but were you here in 2020 when he tried to steal the election? So
there was a New York Times article in like 2012 where it was like the board of the New York Times like basically joking around like there shouldn't be midterms because the midterms are too white and it's not representative of the country.
Yeah, but it's not just one time, Drew. It's his history of trying to interfere with an American election which he lost. It's his other statements.
I don't like January. I think January 6th was bad, and I think.
I'm not asking for the virtue signal because, I think that you probably do think it was bad. But what I'm saying is, and then I really do want to pivot real quick to your journey and then get into the meat of these issues more than we have already. I do think that you can have a difference of opinion with actions that the Trump administration takes in areas where we would prefer Maduro not be there. We would prefer there not be rampant illegal immigration on the basis of your respect for the foundational values that we all share. And so in that respect and in that vein, let me ask you, do you have a political label? And you said you were a conservative.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your biggest influences in terms of your current political thinking. Who do you look up to? Who do you see as having the right set of ideas? Is there a single person or a collection of people that you think they got it?
I think the person that I am most inspired by politically right now is Lee Kuan Yew. And Lee Kuan Yew had he faced an almost impossible set of circumstances when he first came to power in Singapore. He faced like a communist movement in Singapore that was essentially Maoist and wanted to overthrow the government. It was a very small country. He originally wanted to federate Singapore with Malaysia, and he was essentially they threw Singapore out of the union, and he was therefore forced to try go his own path, independence. A country that basically didn't have its own water reserve, didn't have its own military. They were extremely vulnerable, and they also suffered as well from years of race riots. It was a very fragile society. It was very low trust society as well. And he built a high trust society from nothing. He built up a society that actually works, that actually has social cohesion. It unfortunately required very strict methods of law and order, extremely harsh methods with criminality, essentially zero tolerance for criminality. And there were some harsh episodes that, in a Westminster liberal tradition, we would not recognize. So, for example, Operation Cold Store, he rounded up 200 of the top communist leaders in Singapore in one day. And it was essentially sort of an extra legal move. And I'm not necessarily advocating for extra legal moves. I'm just saying, though, like, he was proven right by history in that one episode. He didn't make himself a dictator. He didn't make himself a totalitarian dictatorship. He just surgically took out the communist leadership. And he was able to make Singapore an amazing country as a result. And if he hadn't taken out the communist leadership, they may have destroyed the country. They may have tried to launch a communist insurgency in the city. And you look at what happened in Peru with Shining Path. You look at what happened in China with Mao. The communists in the 20th century, they killed millions of people. And sometimes I think, given basically the fallen nature of the world, you have to be very hard. You have to be very realistic about the nature of political power. I think, unfortunately, too much of the left, they want to handcuff everybody. And for example, what I like about the Operation Cold Store is that's what I would have done if I was in charge of Australia after the Bondi terrorist attack. I would have rounded up the 150 worst people on the Islamic terrorism watch list, and I would have
without charge.
I would have passed an act of parliament to keep these people in detention pending review of their treason status. Because I think I actually subscribe to the kind of German approach, which is sort of militant democracy, where it's like, if your ideology seeks to completely destroy the constitution, communism, Nazism, or Islamic extremism, I believe that you should be taken out of the political arena. I know you're going to then bring up January 6th and
no, let's not do January 6th. Too easy.
Yeah. Drew's a fascist for that. It's not fascism at all.
So the chat is all going to be pro Pisco.
Yeah, I know.
We haven't put it on Drew's platform yet, but so just keep that in mind as well. It's fine. That they're all pro Pisco.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm listening to what you said, and I'm concerned a little bit.
Okay.
Because I do think that there are certain countries in different situations. For example, Bukele in El Salvador, where the gang problem is horrific.
Yes.
And so I struggle sometimes thinking about,
Bukele's a very good example of this, because he is in a way not really ruling by the rule of law, obviously.
Yeah.
But also the gang situation in El Salvador was so
Now I think that there's a little bit of misinformation about the nature of whether his intervention or his deals with the gangs or whatever it is that caused the sort of crime rate to go down in El Salvador, what they're doing with the numbers, etc. But I'm telling you that it's not trivial what you point to, which is there are problems of crime. There are problems of insurgencies that aren't trivial and that threaten societies.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that
the way that it links back to my original conservative view is because I see the world as this kind of fallen place, and I'm so much my view of human nature is so much darker now. The thing that I am terrified of, before I used to think, wow, we're going to have this utopia. We change 20 policies and we can make the world perfect. We can perfect the human individual. Now my greatest worry is we are literally on the verge, in a lot of Western countries, there's the prospect in like France and Britain of an actual Islamist insurgency with a lot of violence, like that would look like the Troubles, but far more murderous. And I think as well, like, there are increasingly, when you look at the murders of Charlie Kirk and you look at, for example, the murder of Brian Thompson by Luigi Mangione, there is a faction of the extreme left, not the normal left, but the extreme left, like actual communists, who increasingly take a sort of Leninist vanguard approach where they actually are willing to kill people.
Well, let's just slow down a little bit.
And I'm trying to, what I would like to do is, I actually want to preserve social cohesion. I want to try and prevent a fucking terrible catastrophe.
We all want, I hope we all want the same thing. We want good results for people. We don't want fallen states. We don't want anarchy. We don't want chaos. We don't want authoritarianism. So what I granted to you is that there are things that are not, quote unquote, constitutional liberty threats, but that nonetheless are existential as they pose themselves on society. I'm not saying that that's not true of insurgencies, whether communists, otherwise, criminals, gangs, whatever. I'm granting that. But you pointed to one example of Peru and the Shining Path, this Maoist insurrection that occurred
This is a really interesting topic because you'll bring up the Fujimori, who was very brutal. Very brutal.
And dissolved Congress, right?
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with dissolving Congress.
Right. It was... And this is
they were literally the most murderous insurgency, like probably the most murderous leftist insurgency of the 20th century.
Doubt.
On a per capita level, they were so evil.
Part of the history that tracks me to the United States is wrapped up in some of that. Not saying that we were like refugees or anything. I was.
Drew, your eyebrows are like a little baby's compared to Pisco. Well said.
Well, we look like brothers, all right. But note that some of the scenarios that you bring up, and we talked about Bukele, we talk about Fujimori. Yeah. They're without any due process, keeping people locked up on political offenses or no crimes at all. Fujimori dissolves Congress, right? This is the same kind of logic, by the way, of the communist tyrants in China, where they have arbitrary detention. Why do they lock up the Uyghurs? Drew, that's a rhetorical question. Because at least their claim is, and we can think that they have other objectives as well, but their claim, at least partially, is related to issues of Islamic extremism. And likewise, with criminality, this is why we're rounding people up. They're a threat to the state. They're a threat to the security. So it's very easy to point to threats and point to bad people. Yeah. But once the power is given away and you just grant deference to anyone claiming that we're in an existential state, all of a sudden you look around and you're China. All of a sudden you look around and you're Bukele. And now, what separates us from the people that we hate? What separates us?
Okay, here's the distinction though, right? The reason I like Lee Kuan Yew is that he was not like a totalitarian dictator. He wasn't trying to go into people's homes and like mold their soul. One of the things I hate so much about like Xi Jinping's regime in China is that like they literally have Xi Jinping thought classes for kindergarteners. Like people like you'll literally be 5 years. Your kid will be 5 years old, and you have to learn like the ideology.
Where do you think Trump's going? Where do you think Trump's going?
I don't think Trump. I don't think it's going to be Donald Trump.
Wait, there is so much. Laugh. You laugh.
There is so much civil society resistance in America that could just never happen.
Well, I'm hopeful of that. But I'm asking, what do you think he's trying to do? Some of these governors and some of these state officials have like started saying our new official Bible is the Trump Bible, and we're going to teach like MAGA to our kids.
I don't think that. I don't think that there's even a risk of that at all. There is so much. There, like every single action has an equal and opposite reaction, Pisco. And look there is a massive grassroots opposition to Trump inside America because it's a democracy. And even like Steve Bannon,
but I'm trying to keep it that way though.
And I want America to be a democracy too. I would like Trump.
I'm not sure about that.
I do want America to be a democracy.
Part of a democracy means following the democratically established laws, because these laws that people are so easy to poo-poo are an expression of our democratic will, just the same way as Trump's election was an expression of democratic will. Those laws were passed and represent a democratic decision the American people took. And by ignoring them, we are not following what our democracy is supposed to be about, which is rule by the majority subject to constraints. That is what our society is supposed to be about. So when people say, oh, who cares about this little subsection? Who cares about following the AUMF? Who cares about the due process clause? Let's get Mahmoud Khalil and let's just invent some pretext to deport him. We can get into that too at some point. Then you're just saying like, who cares about the law? But if you say who cares about the law, well, who cares about democracy?
Okay, let me explain my position, right? It's not that I have no respect for the law. I'm actually trying to defend democracy. And I actually think the long-term greatest threats to democracy across the Western world are like left-wing militants. I'm not talking about normal center-left. I'm talking about people who literally support Luigi Mangione types, extrajudicial killings, etc. And Islamist extremists, not normal Muslims, but Islamist extremists.
So who are the worst actors who aren't like these rogue Luigi Mangiones or this guy? Who's the fuck killed Charlie Kirk? Tyler Robinson. Allegedly. It might have been
the problem is I take ideas seriously, Pisco. And so when I look around and there are heaps of people, even just in my normal social circles that I knew from university, where they're like fully endorsing like extrajudicial murders of people that they politically disagree with, that is extremely concerning to me. And I just take it seriously that these people, I know you could be like, oh, well, they don't really mean it. It's just because they don't like Charlie Kirk. They're just memeing. But I take it seriously when people are like...
I think some people mean it.
Yeah, some people mean it.
I think some people are happy that he's dead.
And my worst case scenario is a Shining Path style insurgency in Western
America.
country.
But that's not a threat in America.
I don't think that's a current threat, but that is a worst case scenario. And
but it's not going to happen because Hassan Piker's not going to... He's not going to do it. His life's too good.
That's true.
And the people who support him, they enjoy being Americans.
Okay, it's easy to say it will never happen, but if you look at the early 1970s...
I'm just saying there's not a good threat of it. There's not a significant threat
in the early 1970s, there were literally thousands of political bombings across the United States with the Weathermen Underground. There was left-wing political extremist terrorism.
And there was assassination too. So that's another point I wanted to raise.
And assassinations.
And so like people who say, Charlie Kirk radicalized me, this radicalized me. The story of American democracy...
But that's why Nixon was elected.
I know, but let me finish it. The story of American democracy is in some sense a story of political assassination. Because so much of our history relies on these key moments of assassination, whether it's Lincoln and Reconstruction, or JFK, or the killing of Martin Luther King. Blessed be his name. It's his day today. Did you thank Martin Luther King?
God bless him.
I don't see you post about Martin Luther King. I see you post about Malcolm X, an Islamic nation of Islam.
I think
MLK.
My Malcolm X stuff is a meme.
Okay, it's a meme.
MLK's obviously a lot better than Malcolm X, who was like a separatist.
Is an unfortunate but persistent reality of American politics. And the Charlie Kirk assassination, as brutal as it was, as unjustified it was, wasn't a sea change that represents a fallen state.
Okay. After the Charlie Kirk assassination, I actually went back to reading about Nixon and the 1968 and 1972 elections. And the reason I did that is, you are right, that America has been in this sort of type of political environment before. But you should recognize this, Pisco. If you look at the history of the 1968 and 1972 elections, a majority, there was a massive break to the right because there was such disorder in America. There was so much insecurity. There were left-wing political bombings. There were so many assassinations. The radical protesters were terrifying people.
Man.
1968 was close. 1972 was a wipeout.
Well, that's because of McGovern and some other shit.
But 1972 though was that was a full repudiation of the sort of left-wing cultural politics of that era.
Well, I think it represents part of the Southern strategy. It represents Nixon appealing to some baser instincts.
But it's not just the Southern strategy. They're they won in every single state. The only one was Minnesota that didn't go right in that era. There was a massive part of the Democratic base that went over to the Nixon.
You say that, but who were these disorders targeted at? They were targeted at Johnson. How many kids did you kill today?
No. But here's the thing. The average voter didn't perceive it as, they were anti-LBJ. They perceived it as they were anti-American. And they would bring the Viet Cong flags to the rallies, like how the protesters today bring the Hamas flags to the rallies. There's this tradition, I think it's actually very similar to that sort of late 60s, early 70s period. And in that era, people responded to the insecurity and the chaos and the assassinations and the bombings by moving to the right because people wanted order. They wanted security. And that's sort of similar to how I've shifted.
But that's kind of a descriptive claim, though, because you wouldn't say something like, well, I am shifting to the right because I'm scared. And that's that's literally, I couldn't say that myself.
I shifted to the right because I'm scared of left-wingers who want to murder me.
Would that be an accurate statement?
That's actually an accurate statement. And I'm honest about it. There are these people who are honest about this stuff. They celebrated the massacre of October 7. They celebrated Charlie Kirk. They celebrated Luigi Mangione. They constantly say, we believe in extrajudicial killings and massacres, and we hate you. And what's the normal person? A normal person in my position, Pisco, would shift to the right. That's why it's so important that normal people on the left, like you, center-leftists, should go so hard against the tankies, because it actually pushes people like me to the right.
But I do go hard on tankies.
It's somewhat. Do you go that hard on Hassan?
I mean, I don't watch a lot of Hassan's stuff.
I think Hassan is actually a tanky.
I think Hassan's a Marxist-Leninist, and I think that represents a tanky. And I absolutely have condemned some of Hassan's takes on the election stuff.
Because this is the problem, right? Like, at the end of the day,
I spend most of my time looking at Hassan.
I know,
and the reason is because I just view him as kind of politically irrelevant.
He's not really
ideologically.
Though. I mean, not really though, because he's got these contacts with the sort of like left wing of the Democratic Party. Like,
no, he's very popular. He's influential,
and he's very popular. Like, I know so many.
I just know that the people who interact with him, AOC, Mamdani, they think he's funny. They know he's popular, and they're using his audience. He is not having an influence on them. They're trying to bring Hassan into the orbit and to use his audience. So I view that as extractive from Hassan.
I think,
and I don't really.
But the thing is, though, like, I think that should be seen. I think that should be seen as extreme as like, okay, if Trump was trying to bring in the Nick Fuentes audience, that's. I think Hassan should be viewed as the left-wing equivalent of Nick Fuentes. It should be. There should be a cordon sanitaire. There should be a massive.
Who do you think is worse, Hassan or Fuentes?
I think they're equally bad for society.
Equally bad.
I genuinely think that, dude. Hassan has been very honest that in his ideal society. I remember watching his podcast with what's that guy, the Ross Douthat at the New York Times, and he straight up said, like, if he ever had full political power, like, he would basically have like armed requisitions of property and stuff like that in Los Angeles. Like, he was open about that.
He's a Marxist-Leninist.
He does believe in using. He actually was open. He said, "I do believe in using military, like political violence and force to achieve his aims."
Nick's not far off on that score.
Well, Fuentes also believes in using violence for that reason.
Trump is like trying to nationalize so much shit. These are not ideological free market capitalists.
But it's not about capitalism. Right. It's not about capitalism necessarily. That's the thing. For me, it's not necessarily about capitalism versus socialism. It's like civilization versus anti-civilization sort of thing. And I think I would see Nick Fuentes and Hassan Piker as civilizational threats. Like, they both use.
Do you think Hassan hates Jews?
I think he's latent. I think he's got anti-Semitism in him. I think he does.
But like, as a conscious volitional, I don't like Jews.
Like, look. Like, what's the number of Jews who are Zionists? Like, it's more than 50% across the world. And so he just hates anyone who's a Zionist. So he hates more than 50% of Jews.
Okay, but you wouldn't use that logic on Islam, would you? That you hate Muslims because you don't like the ideology of Islamism or
no? Because I think extremist political Islamism is probably 10-20% of the total.
You don't believe this in the Islamic world, in the Ummah?
Across the Ummah, it's about 10% militant Islam.
Oh, okay, but you're only defining it as militant Islam. But do you honestly, does that hatred and dislike not go to Islamism itself or political Islam in any respect?
Like, I hate extremist Islam, which is about 10%, unfortunately, of the global Muslim population. No, but put aside
extreme, because there's extremist Zionists, there's liberal Zionists, and I think that probably Hassan doesn't like liberal Zionism or extremist Zionism. But you don't.
He straight up said it. He said any Zionist is evil. Like, he said, it shouldn't even be a dog catcher.
He's very much anti-Zionist. But
that's a majority of the Jewish population worldwide.
Islamism, you're anti-political Islam.
I don't.
Yes, you are. Why are you hiding from it?
Yes, I am. I am anti-political Islam. But I don't. But I don't think that the majority of Muslims. I don't know. But I don't think that the majority of Muslims worldwide are.
But why would that make a difference? Why would that make a difference on your bigotry or not? If you're a bigot because you disagree with it happens to be the case that the ideology is shared by.
But it's gone further. But here's the thing, though. It's gone further than him just saying that he disagrees with the ideology of Zionism, though. Like, he's literally said.
Sorry, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that more than 50% of Muslims are militant. I've just meant Islamist and political who believe that Islam should be incorporated in politics.
Okay, but here's the difference, right? You're saying disagreeing with an ideology is not the same as hating people of the race.
You believe that, yes.
Yes, and I agree with that. That's it, though. I think he's gone way further than just saying, I disagree with Zionism. Like, after October 7, he was on the Klein podcast, and they were talking. Ethan Klein wanted Hassan Piker to condemn one of his friends who said that every single person who died, it was justified because they were settler colonists. And Ethan Klein made the point. He was like, there were babies there were like infants who were killed. Are they really settler colonists?
And he's like breaking down.
And no, but Hassan Piker said, well, like, babies can be settlers too. Like,
it's reprehensible.
But that goes beyond just him going like, I have a political disagreement with Zionism as an ideology. Like, I think there's a level of like hatefulness and militancy there where he's willing to justify even potentially the killing of non-combatant children. Yeah,
like you are.
When did I ever endorse killing children?
You support Israel.
I've never said that children should ever be killed.
But
ever.
As a function of the war aims, function of the war aims.
I've never said that children in Gaza
as a function of the war aims.
No, it's very different here, Pisco.
In what respect?
Hassan straight up said that Israeli children could be justified militant targets because they were settler colonists.
He said those words.
He said Baby, okay, in the context, the broader conversation was about whether killing settler colonists was justified.
Yeah.
And Ethan said, well, there were kids that were, in those kibbutzim.
Yeah.
And Hassan responded with this kind of implied thing that they were also implicitly militant threats by going, well, babies can be settlers too. That was a crazy thing to say.
It's a crazy thing to say.
But I've never once said that Palestinian children are ever a justified target. And I don't support that. I don't support that. At the end of the day, my position is not even radical. I support a two-state solution. I just think that I think that Hamas should not run Gaza, which is like not even extreme position at all.
I'm not saying that it's an extreme position for you not to want Hamas to run Gaza. I'm not saying that I agree with Hassan Piker, or what do you guys call him? Hamas Piker, whatever.
I didn't even say that. I've never even said that. But
yeah, you don't, right? So Hassan Piker's political vision of that he would enact in America, or that I agree with.
He was open that his political vision would involve massive violence,
or that I would agree with his statements, some of which I find reprehensible. Here's the difference, though. Overall, Hassan is much closer to me than Nick Fuentes.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
No, but I also think he should be much closer to you than Nick Fuentes.
But here's the thing, though, right? You are willing to say that Hassan is still part of the Popular Front, whereas the reason
what do you mean by that?
Like you think that the Popular Front resistance to Trump should extend to the left, incorporating even people like Hassan Piker.
It depends what you mean by incorporate.
And that is actually...
It depends what you mean by incorporate.
That is almost like straight up the thing that broke my sort of like leftism, where it's like, okay, you guys want to be in a Popular Front with like actual communists, like I'm not going to be part of the Popular Front then.
So it depends what you mean by it incorporates Hassan Piker. If incorporates Hassan Piker means he gets a seat at the policy discussion table, no, I don't think that we need to listen to Hassan's takes on policy, except to the extent that they're good ideas. And when there are good ideas, just like Mamdani, you would agree if Mamdani has good ideas. If Trump has good ideas, on the merits of those ideas, you listen to them. But from a policy perspective, no. From the perspective of, do we interact with them? You would interact with Hassan.
There's a difference, right?
You would interact with
I would
Hassan.
Debate it with him in a sort of like hostile oppositional fashion.
And if a politician comes to Hassan and is like, listen, we're doing a stream to try to rally the vote for a candidate. I don't really think that that's a signal that they're turning into tankies.
No, but here's the difference though. Like if I were to interact with Hassan, it would so obviously be an oppositional conversation because
no doubt.
Like I've obviously condemned him many times. He's condemned me and blah, blah, blah. We've attacked each other many times. It would be an oppositional conversation. I think that's very different to like Zoran going like, let's have a friendly discussion and you're going to promote me. He shouldn't be like allowed in the sort of Democrat tent. He shouldn't be like, there should be no Democratic politicians who are like, I'm willing to have a sit down with Hassan Piker.
Really?
Yes. Because he's a fucking Marxist-Leninist. He's a communist, man. He believes in killing people. He believes in killing people.
So Ro Khanna just had a sit down with him.
Yeah, that's wrong. I think that's terrible. That's literally why I don't like the Democrats anymore, because they're willing to incorporate communists in the fucking coalition, in the Big Ten.
So maybe then the disagreement like kind of turns on what we think is a bigger threat, right? So I think we're in an existential threat for our country, and the existential threat isn't coming from communists.
That's
it's coming from fascists.
This is our big ideological difference.
Fascists.
This is actually a big ideological disagreement. I hate the fascists too, but the thing is, I'm not willing to say, okay, because the fascists are so bad, Hassan can be part of the coalition. I'm going to be in the same big tent as like actual communists.
You said have a sit down with. If I thought it was so I'll give you the following example, right? If I thought that going on Hassan Piker's show was necessary to win Kamala Harris the election, don't you think I would do it? And don't you think it would be wrong to give up our country? Now, I'm not saying that that's actually the case, but it gets you into the mode of thinking of who actually has a possibility of running the country. And Hassan doesn't have a chance to do that. And Trump does.
Do you recognize that like a Trumpist could say the exact same, make the same exact argument about Nick Fuentes? Oh, Nick Fuentes he's far away from the policy discussion table. We're just going to use his audience to win. You could literally use the exact same argument, but from the right way. And I would oppose that too. I think there should be a massive cordon sanitaire between the Groypers and anything else.
They could make that argument. They could make that argument. But I do judge Hassan Piker as less bad than Nick Fuentes.
I think that they're both bad. By condemning Hassan Piker, I'm not letting Nick Fuentes off the hook. I think Nick Fuentes is a murderous, evil person. But I also think that Hassan is a murderous, evil person. I don't think it's right to say, oh, well, Hassan's less bad, so we can potentially work with him on some things. Like, at the end of the day, Hassan literally said that in his perfect world, he would use force to, like, have massive roundups and stuff like that.
Which you support when it's fucking, when it's against crime that you don't like, right? You support it when it's the context of, oh my God, who's the dictator of El Salvador? Bukele, your biggest inspiration guy, so rounded up communists. That's your example.
Okay, here's the difference, Pisco. Yeah. Some things are good and some things are bad. So, for example, rounding up, Bukele rounding up literal MS-13 guys with MS-13
No, not just
tattoos,
them.
but tattoos on their head.
No, not just them.
They had,
no, it's your false assumption that it's just MS-13 people. They're rounding up innocent people, and guess what? Also accepting innocent people from America as part of our treaty.
Look, I do want to say, I don't think that, like, you know, deported illegal immigrants should go to CCOT. That should not happen.
So I'm saying you have the same view of ends justify means. Now, I agree with you that there are some ends that Hassan have that I think are bad. And there's the ends of like ending crime with respect to like violent crime, organized crime. Maybe I would view that as a little different. But I'm just saying, like, in terms of how you view what they're willing to do.
But here's the difference.
You're also willing to do insane things.
Okay, but here's the difference though, Pisco. Literally, if Hassan Piker, if I lived in America and Hassan Piker somehow had power, he would very concretely try to kill me.
Hassan?
Yes, I genuinely believe that. And that's why I just am not going to be on the same side as him.
Why do you think he's going to try to kill you?
Because he straight up said, like, he's willing to use political force and violence to achieve his ends, and I would be rounded. Of course, I would be counted as a counter-revolutionary. He loves Mao Zedong. I've been an anti-communist my entire life. I would of course be fucking killed if Hassan Piker was in power.
Was in power as dictator or in power as like a senator, president type people?
Oh, like if he had full political power.
So here's my,
and I know that's not going to happen, but I'm just saying.
Here's my concern.
I'm just saying, we should actually consider. Okay, what does this person want to do in their ideal world? Like, in my ideal world...
No, I agree.
Because this is the funny thing. In my ideal world, it's actually very limited. Like, I would round up, like, 150 jihadist extremists, like, literally linked to ISIS in Australia, and deport 150 people.
Well, you just said in your ideal world...
Whereas Hassan Piker's ideal world would kill millions of people.
Well, you just said in your ideal world, you would have rounded up those people after the attack in Australia.
Yeah, 150 of the worst ISIS-linked extremists.
Even on the basis of their affiliation, not on any substantive...
Well, on the basis that they, like, literally have... So in Australia, there were about 200 people who tried to join ISIS in the middle of the 2010s, and they had their passports...
That happened in UK too.
And they had their passports confiscated by the Australian government.
Okay.
After the Bondi terrorist attack, like, this is the extent of the amount of executive power that I would like to use. And it's not even that much. We're talking about people who, like, literally tried to join ISIS. We would put them in prison because they represent a major threat to the public. Whereas Hassan Piker, in his ideal world, would probably kill millions of people.
Would kill millions?
Yes. Because this is what has happened in every single communist regime.
What would Fuentes do? Would he kill millions?
Yes, he would also kill millions, which is why I hate him. And I literally had a post attacking Nick Fuentes yesterday that had 6 million views. I hate Nick Fuentes.
Okay. Can I try to channel this conversation to a specific point of inquiry?
Okay, yes.
Which is not sort of take into account the ideal world, for sure.
Yeah.
Take into account the ideology. But let's talk about what's happening in our country, or in this country right now.
Yep.
What we think might be realistic to happen. Taking into account, of course, the ideals. Trump is, on the basis of viewpoint, because you disagree with him, using the power of the state to go against his political enemies. He's doing so with prosecutions. He's doing so through immigration. He's doing so through defunding of universities, right? You might think it's based to, like, defund Harvard or something.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't necessarily agree with that.
What I'm trying to say is,
as I said, I definitely don't agree with everything that Trump's ever said or done.
That maybe if Hassan Piker were president, he would revoke your visa or something.
No, not even that. I genuinely think if Hassan Piker had political power in America, and if I lived here, he would try to kill me. Yes. Okay. He's been obvious. He's literally joked about killing me on his stream before.
Okay. I haven't seen that, but maybe he wants to kill you. Maybe he would kill you if he had power.
I just take it seriously. Like, if somebody's a Marxist-Leninist...
But I take Trump seriously when he says...
I have a default assumption that Marxist-Leninists want to kill me.
Okay.
And therefore I support anti-communist politicians. And I don't agree with everything that Trump's ever done or said, but I think that there's more opposition to Marxist-Leninists on the right than on the left. And that's why I've become right-wing.
Because of the urgent need to fight communism in America and in Australia.
Well, I know that there's no risk of Australia and America going communist necessarily, but there is a risk of that early 1970s style political violence initiated by left-wing militants. There is a risk of that. In Germany recently, there was a sabotage attack by a left-wing militant group that literally killed people because they put the energy system down and people died of freezing cold in winter temperatures. So
I'm looking around, I'm seeing ICE do insane shit. I'm seeing our country descend into further authoritarianism.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Someone said Drew cheered for 100 dead Venezuelans an hour ago. Like, no, not 100 dead Venezuelans. I'm talking about literally the people who were oppressing the Venezuelan people. And most of the people that killed in that operation were literally the Cuban presidential guard, the people who were responsible. They were literally foreigners in Venezuela responsible for protecting the dictator from his own people.
Maybe if I had the inclination that you do, that we are at the precipice. You really do think we're at the precipice of like a major left-wing uprising in America and Australia?
I'll tell you what my worst case scenario is.
What do you think is likely?
Yeah,
What do you think is
I think what is likely is this. And it's not, I'm not some kind of like deluded Fox News commentator who's going to say like, oh, there's going to be communism tomorrow in America. I don't believe that, right? What I think is actually a risk is that you see early 1970s style political violence en masse. And so that would involve thousands of sabotage attempts and bombings. That's what happened. That's when with the Weather Underground and a number of militant terrorist groups that came from the extreme left. And I think that is definitely a possibility. And I also think less so in America, but probably it is a genuine threat in Western Europe and probably in Australia too. There is enough of there is a large enough militant Islamist population in these countries that there could be a sustained Troubles-style insurgency that involves from
Muslims
regular
in America.
Not in America. I think it's far less of a. I think Islamic extremism is far less of a problem in America compared to Australia and Western Europe. And you can tell from that point of view, like that's showing that I'm not a hack, because I can understand like there are different conditions in America to Western Europe and Australia. I do think in Western Europe and Australia there is the risk in the next 10 years that there could be a sustained period of endemic political violence initiated by Islamist extremists.
So make the case for me, because I think that if the Democrats were coming into an election, let's say Gavin Newsom against J.D. Vance, that now seems like the betting odds right now, but a lot can change.
Yeah.
Make me the case that I'm a person who believes in liberal values. I don't agree with extremists like Islamism. I'm not a Marxist-Leninist.
Yeah.
Make the case that I should be more worried about that than my country being torn apart by fascist bootlicking thugs that we're seeing right now. Like, one thing we're not seeing in America, we're seeing isolated acts of violence, no doubt, but not to the scale and enormity of the kind of depravity of the Trump administration. Version 2.
That is an argument.
Tell me I should be more worried about that, which I don't think, at least as of now, I've been convinced is that much of a threat in America, and which people have been saying.
Well, it's not a threat to you. There's no, there would be no threat to you.
Wait,
like, Hassan Park would not kill you if he came to power.
You don't think that I would protect your rights not to be killed by President Piker?
Sure, you would.
I would.
I don't think you're at risk of these people. I am at risk of these people. If left-wing militants gain more power in the West, I am at risk. You're not at risk.
Okay, but all right, you can say that. Whatever, fine. But put that to the side for a second. Okay. My personal health and safety, your personal health and safety, and let's just talk about the overall risk assessment.
Yeah.
We're coming into elections and stuff.
Yes.
Tell me why I should be more worried about that, especially in light of the fact that for decades we've been told there's communists lurking behind every school. They're in your neighborhood. They're actually there.
In the 50s, there actually was massive. Like, it's real. Like, the Rosenbergs literally leaked the reason why the Soviet Union got the nuclear bomb. The reason why the Soviets got the nuclear bomb was because there was intelligence.
There's espionage. Yes, there's always been espionage. And absolutely true. But the Iron Curtain has lifted. There's no more Soviet Union. I agree Russia's a threat. It's a geostrategic threat, huge threat. I hate the state of Russia. I hate Putin, et cetera, et cetera. That's why that's another reason I'm against Trump. Why am I against Trump? Well, I want to keep NATO together.
And I agree with that. My biggest disagreement with
Russia. So just keep that in mind.
That is my biggest disagreement with Trump. Okay. My biggest disagreement with Trump is the Greenland
Trump
stuff
is destroying the West alliance. He's destroying the Western alliances.
Look, I will say very strongly, I strongly disagree with Trump's approach to Europe. I think they are right to criticize the European governments for allowing too high levels of immigration to the point that it massively changes the character of the country. But I do strongly disagree with his threats against NATO and Ukraine.
We've been told by reactionaries for decades and decades they're coming. And there have been there's atomic espionage, no doubt.
In the 70s, there were 5,000. So there were literally 5,000 political bombings in the West. In the United States, there were from the year 1970 to 1973, there were literally like 5,000 political bombings initiated by left-wing.
There have been bombings by right-wing reactionaries, Oklahoma City bombing. There's been
True, but there was more. There were in terms of the actual number of incidents, it didn't kill that many people, but the sheer number, the sheer volume
our
of political bombings
leaders
from the left-wing militants.
The leaders from the left in this country, the most left-wing president in our history has been Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. He's been the most left-wing.
I didn't hate Biden necessarily.
And the guy's a dinosaur. And the guy is an anti-communist. And the guy is an Israel supporter. And the guy is... So, like, we're not in danger of this. The mainstream of the Democratic center left in this country are based libs who want their country back from the thugs, from the barbarians who are running it. The barbarians who are running it are Americans, are other Americans who have given up on the country. And we want to get the barbarians out. And that's what the center-left Democrats want. And we will make common cause with the people who want to get the barbarians out of the White House.
Okay, this is actually very disturbing to me. Because listen, because you're labeling a huge section of the country, tens of millions of people.
No, the elites, the MAGA elites who have been installed in the White House, these freaks of nature.
Well, you say installed. There was a Democratic election that elected Trump.
But you know this. They're upset because of the economic conditions. They're upset because of inflation. They're upset because of prices. So yes, the people turn to a demagogue. It's a story as old as time.
Well, that's the point.
It's a story as old as time.
Look, you fundamentally disagree with.
I don't disagree with democracy. I'm trying to use democracy to stop the threat against democracy.
Okay, but you do fundamentally see the election of Trump as illegitimate.
No, well, it depends. What do you mean by that?
Well,
it depends what you mean by that. I think it's I think he's unconstitutional. I don't actually think he is the president at the moment. Let me tell you why. I think he's ineligible for the office of president. I believe that
that's a pretty large view. Like, I think he did win the election.
He definitely won the election. He definitely was the winner of the election. I'm not denying that he also is occupying the office. I'm not arguing that he's not using the authorities and acting under color of law as a de facto officer. What I think is that he is ineligible to the office. That's a separate legal point that I have.
Because of January 6th, you're going to argue that.
Section 3, yeah.
Okay.
That hasn't been, according to the Supreme Court, Congress has to enforce it. But just because Congress has to enforce it doesn't mean he's not ineligible.
80 million Americans voted for him, man.
I'm not saying that he didn't. I'm not saying he didn't win the majority of the vote. I'm not saying that he isn't currently occupying the office. What I'm saying is only the following. I'm not calling everyone who voted for Trump a barbarian. The MAGA elites who are in the White House at the moment are destroying our country. They're ruining our country. And they're being supported by these tech oligarchs like Elon Musk.
So what would you do to all these
Peter Thiel, who are disgusting freaks?
If you had the full political power, what would you do to them then?
I would charge them for the crimes that they're committed.
So you want to have mass roundups of your political opposition?
No. Give them trials, give them all the rights they want, and charge them for specific offenses. I have never said that we should just do political crimes. I think that Trump should be charged for the crimes he committed. Just like you think that people who commit crimes should be charged who are members of opposing you, I'm assuming. But I've always been in favor of giving them complete rights. That's why I take a close eye on a lot of these cases with Trump and what happened in the state courts and what happened in the federal courts.
Look at the comments. I hope Drew goes to heaven ASAP. Like I'm getting this all the time. I condemn
it. Hey guys. Hey, that actually is against our rules. Do not wish death or heaven. Well, you can say that you wish that if Drew does, that you would go to heaven.
Obviously, we know what he's saying. We know what he's saying. Yeah. And I'm just saying, I'm getting this all the time, and there's a significant factor in me just genuinely coming to view the left as a threat to me personally as an individual. I'm just saying.
That shouldn't be the calculus of your political alignment, though, right? Because your safety, I understand that it can definitely be a realistic reason, a descriptive reason why you're there. But when you step back and ponder in your chair, who is Drew Pavlou? Is Drew Pavlou just influenced by the politics that makes him physically safer?
No, it's not even that. It's just that this sort of the years and years of threats and actual attempts on my life, like in 2022, I
condemn.
I also condemn anything against Pisco, right? Thank you, Pisco. But look, in 2023, I got called in by the Australian Federal Police, our equivalent of the FBI. They said in 2022, we detected a plot against your life essentially in Australia by agents of the Chinese government, and we raided these people. They didn't say agents of the Chinese government, but it was very obvious because another friend of mine who was a Chinese dissident had the exact same conversation in a very similar period. When I went public with that, I had so many bad empanada fans and Hassan Piker fans and all these people going I wish they fucking did it. So it's just it darkens my view of human nature, and it makes me think, okay, if these people have power, they want to do horrible things, they want to kill me and my family, and that's why overall I would align myself more with the right. That doesn't necessarily mean I agree with everything that Trump's ever done or said. I disagree with plenty of things that he's said or done. I wish that he would be a bit less radical sometimes. I think you're right that he goes a bit too radical. Not even a bit too. He goes very radical sometimes. I disagree with that. And look, there are plenty of things that I disagree with. I disagree with them on Ukraine and Greenland and Europe. I think there are some broad areas of agreement. I think America has to have border enforcement. I think America...
Yeah, but Biden thought that. Biden tried to pass a border bill, and he was rebuffed by Trump. The Democratic presidents have enforced the border. Biden had 2 million plus refusals at the border.
Yes, there's 2 million refused, but there were like 10 million who did enter the country. Was it not?
Yeah, because
it was
of
a huge number.
Things out of his control. Things, for example, like the humanitarian crises in Venezuela and places like, for example, El Salvador, where they were fleeing the conditions to the anger, to the hatred of the MAGA elites who castigated the people coming in as essentially people who are looking for handouts.
Is there a single action by MAGA elites or the Trump administration that you think is legal and acceptable? Because it seems that you basically think like just full stop from the second that he got elected, he should just be completely.
Well, I think their budget, the continuing resolution, is probably legal. I think that their the Big Beautiful Bill, the Lake and Riley Act, those are probably legal. I don't know. I don't agree with them on a policy perspective. Are you asking me, is there a single thing that Trump said I agree with?
No, I mean, I'm just saying, to what extent do you actually regard right-wing political opposition in America as legitimate? Because it seems.
That's what you mean by legitimate. If what you mean by legitimate,
I don't know. If you don't like Trump, would there be, say, a Republican president that you would not necessarily be scared by, or you'd think would be reasonably normal?
I wouldn't be scared by which I mean, I wouldn't think that we are in an existential state with a Mitt Romney presidency. I don't think we'd be in an existential state.
The interesting thing is that the interesting thing is, if you go back to 2012, there were a lot of Democrats who treated Mitt Romney as like a existential threat, and they hated him so much, even though he
I wouldn't have voted for him in 2012.
I'm not saying you have to vote. I'm not saying you have to vote for him, but there were a lot of sort of Democrats or center leftists who regarded Mitt Romney as epitome of evil.
On my sleeve, I'm a liberal Democrat, and
I'm saying it's not. I'm not saying
there
you
are
have to
honorable
vote for
Republicans. There are honorable Republicans. I mean, Trump makes Nixon look like a great guy in retrospect. I mean,
I like Nixon. I think he was I think
he was a crook. I think he was a complete crook. But
I think he was a misunderstood guy.
By comparison, I don't even know why Watergate's like that bad. Like compared to all the shit that's happening on with Trump. I want to get to these strikes. I want to get to the intervention.
What do you think is actually the worst thing that he's done?
That he's done?
Yeah. Is it January 6th? You think is the worst thing?
As a person or as a president?
I'm interested both. What do you think is the worst thing?
Yeah, I think trying to destroy an American election that was legal and fair, and thereby undo essentially a major part of our constitutional order and upset an unbroken streak going back to the Civil War, was probably among the worst things that he did.
I think January 6th was bad. I think it was very bad.
I want to get to the strikes. I want to get to the interventions and talk about. Yeah, we mentioned it a little bit. We previewed it a little bit. But before I do, why are you white?
Why am I white? It's a good question. Look, it's just in response to the fact that pretty much all my life, people have treated me as white. Like growing up, I was told that
you're white. You're white if you're treated as white.
Yeah, I fully admit that race is basically very much a sort of socially contingent thing. Look, growing up, I was told that I had white male privilege all the time. Growing up in school, I was told that. Growing up, all the time, all my life, I was treated as white. And the other day, I was hanging out with my Nigerian friend, who's obviously a black guy, and I asked him hey, some guys on Twitter say that I'm not white. What do you think? He just said, yeah, you're fucking white, Drew. And he's Nigerian, and he just thought that I was white.
So you're white because your name is Drew?
No.
Drew's a pretty white name.
That's not what I'm saying. I think
Drew Pickles.
I think it's just that, for all my life, I've been treated as a white person, and I was told in school that I had, white colonizer male privilege. And
Who said that to you?
That's sort of underlying message that you get.
Was it a woman with a pixie cut and
I wouldn't obviously no one actually straight up said to my face, you are guilty, but you get that sort of vibe. It's a very strong leftist sort of streak in Australia right now, where basically the country is viewed as illegitimate from its founding as a sort of genocidal settler colony, and you need to be guilty, and you need to feel guilt about what happened to.
Can we break that apart? So you agree that, I would agree that the American colonialists were definitionally settler colonial and genocidal. You wouldn't doubt that.
I don't necessarily think that they were genocidal. There were killings, obviously. There was a war for territory and land. And look, I don't endorse killing. This was a different era. It was hundreds of years ago. But I don't think that you should say that the essential founding of the country is illegitimate.
I'm not saying it's listen. There are a lot of countries that are founded on genocide, on bad ideas.
Look, in Australia, at least, maybe it's different in America, because it seems in America that even most Democrats will say that America is a legitimate country. But in Australia, it's very, very common. It's very common in Australia to basically say that, Australia is stolen land. It doesn't have any legitimate basis to exist.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that.
There's even basically been a High Court of Australia legal opinion, the legal judgment Mabo.
Mabo, yeah.
Yeah, where in Mabo, it's very interesting. If you read Mabo, the judges literally say, like, we understand that the implications of our decision destroy the legal skeleton of like the country. Like it basically undermines the legal.
Let's ask the uncomfortable question, Drew.
But it's interesting in Mabo.
Let's get to this.
But one really quick thing though.
Yeah.
It is very fascinating, the Mabo decision. The judges basically say
it's Mabo, it's the vibe.
No, that's great. I'm glad that you know that. That's the best Australian film, The Castle. I recommend it to everyone. But it's very interesting. If you look at the Mabo decision, the judges freely say, we understand that our decision is basically saying that Australia was illegitimate from its founding, but we also rule that should not be allowed. That should not itself destroy the entire legal system. So they actually sort of finessed it. It's a very complex thing where they actually admitted, the judges who ruled that decision admitted that they were basically morally kicking the floor out of the sort of country's foundation. They had this sort of emergency sort of backstop in that sort of judgment where they said, like, you know, our ruling should not be taken to completely dismantle the entire legal infrastructure of Australia. But it is interesting, and I've read sort of like. Yeah. I was doing my first year law degree the other year, and very cool. And I was reading a journal article that we were asked to read for the thing, and it was sort of these like very radical sort of I would call them race communist academics who were saying that Mabo was not far enough because the judges acknowledged that it kicked the floor out of the sort of moral foundations of Australia's founding, but they didn't go far enough in actually literally dissolving Australia in that decision. Which is crazy, but that's literally a legal decision that we were.
I want to take this step by step. I think it's a very fascinating part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to ultimately conclude with, I don't want us to have to destroy America and give it back to the descendants of American Indians. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say the same thing about Australia, right?
Yeah.
So we agree on the conclusion there, but I'm not actually sure that some of the descriptive claims made by some of these woke lefties with pixie cuts are actually wrong.
The problem is though, I think the problem is though, like, it's almost impossible to have this conversation where you separate the descriptive claim from the, you know, the moral conclusions from it. I'll give you an example. Okay. Obviously in a Western country, regardless of the fact that these days it's basically secular, I think we are very much marinated in a sort of Christian moral ethical culture. And so it's very simple. Like, we are taught from a very early age that theft is wrong. And we are taught that if something is stolen, it has to be returned. That is the only morally legitimate outcome. So it's very hard for us when we are raised in this kind of environment where even the secular morality is very much influenced by that sort of Christian ethic. It's very hard to say, well, the nation is stolen, but we shouldn't have to give it back. Because I think we
should be able to separate those things because they're different claims. One is what ought be done, and one is what happened. And they are different, right?
Are they different? I'm saying
are they different?
I'm saying that.
Are they different? Are they different? Are they different? They're different. They're different, aren't they?
I think
are they different? Are they different? Answer, and then you can explain.
Yes.
Okay.
Philosophically, they're different, Pisco. Yes. But here's the thing, though. I think that the vast majority of people are not able to separate those two things. And when we have these conversations,
we're reasonable, so we can separate them, all right?
So reasonably, we can both agree that there were terrible acts that were done against.
That's not what I want to get to. I want to get to these lefties who have been maligned by you, and I want to assess their descriptive claims, and then you and we already know we align on the on some of the prescriptions. Okay, because we don't want to give Australia back.
I can descriptively say to you that yes, there were massacres of indigenous Australians.
That's not what I'm saying.
There were murders. There were terrible killings.
Let's do it step by step.
Okay.
Settler colonial, no doubt.
Yes, they were settler colonizers.
Okay. In America and Australia, they committed acts of genocide, no doubt, right?
I don't think that they were inherently genocidal. There were massacres of Native Americans that were wrong. I agree with that.
Not just massacres. They were trying to cleanse the land at times of different of these groups, and
there were massacres. There were massacres. There were acts of obviously gross human rights violations, atrocities. Of course, there were atrocities.
Is genocide really just reserved for the Holocaust, and that's it?
Look, I think it's an extremely high bar to say that the plan of every single European who ever came to Australia in that first, like, sort of 50 years of actual settler colonizer.
Yeah, but you can say that of Germany. Not every German wanted to do it. Not every Nazi wanted it.
No. Distinction.
What?
Okay. Firstly, like, we have to recognize that even today, even though, like, it's so obvious that today America and Australia are not settler colonies today, but there are many leftists who will still argue that they are still settler colonies.
I know, but
so the argument that a lot of leftists make is that it was still settler colonies.
Okay, all right, but
we'll set that aside.
Their history.
Historically,
as a settler colonial project.
Look, if you actually look at the history of I'm not fully versed in the American thing, but if you look at the history in Australia, there were multiple proclamations by the Crown, the actual British authorities, who said there should not be murders of Indigenous Australians, and there were multiple instances where the British settlers who did massacre Indigenous Australians were actually put to death by the British authorities. So we know that there was an official, I don't believe it was the official policy to genocide anybody. And the British authorities actually at times, obviously not enough, but at times they actually even executed people for massacring Indigenous Australians.
Huh. So on that view, then definitionally, China's not committing a genocide against the Uyghurs.
No, because do you think the Chinese Communist Party is like executing people for violations of Uyghur human rights? No, not at all. They're still violating the human rights today.
So they're human rights violations, but your view of genocide is that it needs to be that genocidal acts must emanate from some sort of central source.
Not necessarily. I think you could probably say that, isolated. There were, like, for example, if there was a massacre of Indigenous Australians, like if you gave me, for example, one particular massacre that was, that was directly racially motivated, you could say that individual act was genocidal.
Yeah.
Okay. But I don't believe it's right to tar all Australians with the sort of like the blood guilt of genocide and say that the entire Australian founding was genocidal and that the entire Australian colonial project was genocidal and that Australia is from its core genocidal, which is the claim that the leftists make.
Yeah.
Yes, and I've said this many times. There were acts of individual horrible violence against Indigenous Australians. They were treated unfairly, but that does not mean that Australia should be dismantled today. And I'm ultimately happy that Europeans went to Australia because otherwise I would not have my life. I would not have existed, Pisco.
So here's my.
I ultimately believe this is where I'll get cancelled. I ultimately believe that the European colonization of the Americas
was good.
And well, if it was not good, then I could not have existed.
Well, that's what I mean. Like it seems like your entire outlook has to do with making sure you exist and continue to exist, right? Anything that would
it's self-hatred. It's self-hatred, though. Let me finish. Should I say that I should not have been born because Australia is genocidal?
I'm not saying that. It's just funny to me that your determinations as to the morality of stuff ultimately bear on whether something is imperiling you having existed at all / continuing to exist.
Well, I think that's pretty reasonable. Like, I don't think that it's a smart thing to do to go around basically saying, like, I should not exist. I will agree with a sort of moral philosophical system that says that I should not exist. Okay. I think that's retarded.
Okay, so I heard what you said.
So I'm ultimately happy that the British went to Australia. Okay. Is that a wrong thing?
So why aren't you happy that the immigrants are coming to America and Australia?
Well, it's different. There's different sources. It's different. It's different.
They're doing less worse acts than
it's different. It's different streams, Pisco. It's different.
Why? Why is it different?
Because in both these cases, there were nations that were founded, new nations that were founded.
No, but there were tribes. They had their own spheres of sovereignty. Yes, they had different senses of property than understood by the old worlds, but there was still an understanding that there was domains. These were people. I don't think they should have been. I don't agree with violence in that way. This was hundreds of years ago. And the world was very different. That's an excuse not to think. That is a state of exception. And what you're saying is, it was good for them to immigrate to these different places, to set up their flags. And you don't have a problem given that the natural tendency was to lead to a bunch
there's a difference between founding a new nation and then coming to the nation 200 years after it was founded, or 300 years after it was founded.
But it's premised on a notion that you don't recognize the nationhood of the various different tribes in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes.
I don't recognize
American Indians.
I don't recognize them as a separate nation.
And why is that? Because they're not a people?
No, they are a people, and they should.
Are the Palestinians a people?
Yes, they are a people, and I do believe in a Palestinian statehood. But are you really asking me here to endorse like a separate Aboriginal state in Australia, like Aboriginal?
No, that's exactly what.
It seems like that's what you're asking me to do. No,
that's exactly
because you want me to acknowledge their nationhood.
No, that's exactly what I'm not trying to do. I'm trying to chart out why it was good for the Europeans to go to these areas, take them over, and in so doing, necessarily take upon horrific acts. But immigrants who are doing 0.00001% of that and just trying to live within the confines of these different countries, you have disdain for them. And you say
not necessarily, not everyone. I think that there is still a level of immigration that can be good for society, and I don't think anybody should ever be like barred based on race or whatever. I just think like if you're going to import infinity amounts of people from extremely poor countries, it's going to change the culture of the majority country. And look, my loyalty is to the West. I'm happy. I was born in a Western country. It's my culture. It's my identity. It's what I love.
Well, I don't think that you're personally responsible for the genocides that happened in America or Australia.
And if I could press a button, that they would not like if I don't like the fact that Indigenous people were killed hundreds of years ago. I think that's sad, but I don't think that Australia should not exist. I don't think that America should not exist. I think it's better for.
And given that your ancestors were probably. From the Anglo Australia.
I think
you're not responsible either by blood either.
But I think overall, for human history, it is better that America existed. It's better that Australia existed.
And I want to preserve America. I don't want to destroy it.
And the amazing thing as well is, this is also a fact, Pisco. Like, life expectancy among Indigenous Australians prior to British colonization was literally in the 30s, and infant mortality was way off the charts, and there was massive amounts of violence. Like it was
you won't even give them the voice. Well, you won't even give them the voice.
I don't believe in racially separate. I don't believe in establishing racially separate, houses of parliament. Like, essentially.
Yeah, but it's not a official functionary that can enact legislation by itself.
I don't believe in establishing in the Constitution separate categories of Australians based on race.
But there's in the American context as well. There's this kind of I talked about this in my debate about birthright citizenship with Ryan Mullally. There's a peculiarity to the history of American Indians that, we have specific case law and specific categories of sovereignty in the United States. For American Indians, it's marginal, it's not dominant, but it exists, and we haven't fallen apart. What's actually threatening our government aren't the American Indians and natives who still live. It's the natives, the new natives, that is to say, the people who have abandoned the project of America. This is Trump. This is J.D. Vance, and they've abandoned it not just in the domestic sense, but in our stage globally. And I want to get to our
one thing here, Pisco. You're kind of defining the entire American project as just always being pro-immigration, just always being racial,
as pro-constitution, because Lincoln said,
you know as well as I do, there were massive periods of American history where there was massive racism.
Of course, the project here I'm not defining as open borders or love everybody. Okay, America has never lived up to that ideal, but. What did Lincoln say at Gettysburg? Lincoln said at Gettysburg that government of the people, by the people, for the people, it's his hope, right? That it shall not perish from the earth. The Civil War.
I agree with that. I don't want to
fought between the North and the South wasn't just about the North and the South. Let me finish this point, and I'll let you get in. It was a fight for whether or not democracy itself would perish from the earth, because America was this experiment. It was this new thing our fathers brought forth on this continent, a new nation. And conceived in liberty, right? So this is the idea of America to me is so salient, and that's why I'm jealous.
I love that idea of America as well. I also just think though, like a particular nation produced that vision of liberty, and you can't just completely swap out the population of America.
I'm not saying you could completely do that. I know. It sounds like Pearl, right? Did you see the Pearlie Davis debate with Anna Kasparian?
I actually didn't see that.
She got crushed because
I don't know what did Pearl say.
One of the hypotheticals, she was like, "What would you do? Do you have a plan, Anna, for when all men just step away from society?" And it's like, no, that's not going to happen. And these kinds of alarmist speculations about the nature of our demographics, I think have never been borne out before. Yes, we're under a demographic changes, no doubt, but those have been persisting over decades. And I'm more concerned about the age demographics than the racial demographics. But putting that aside,
I don't think people should be defined based off race. I actually don't believe in racial stratification. At the same time, I just don't think that when you rapidly change the demographics of a society, you create the potential for a lot of social tension and social pressure. And what I like about Lee Kuan Yew's approach in Singapore is he just basically achieved stable ethnic demographics. He welcomes in diverse.
So you do want racial policies before you I don't want to give the voice because I don't want to legitimize any kind of racial policy or racial chamber.
It's not racial. Pisco.
It's ethnic.
Pisco.
Racial ethnic.
Pisco. What I like about the Lee Kuan Yew approach is there is still people call Singapore a multicultural society, and it's true. It is a multicultural society. There's about the demographics are about 74% Han Chinese. It's about 20% Malaya and about 10% Muslim. It's basically been that rough mix for the past 50 years. They accept diversity. They accept migrants from all across the world, but they don't try to rapidly change it because they want to produce a level of social calm.
Do you think Biden is doing that?
I don't think there's a. I don't think there's a deliberate plan necessarily.
If anyone has a deliberate plan on demographics, it's the Trump administration. They're calling things the third world, shithole countries. They're imposing these different restrictions based on.
I think Trumpism is like a break the glass emergency response. It's like a lot of right-wing populism is a response to changing demographics, and I'm not endorsing everything they say or do. I'm just saying, like, if leftists were smart, they wouldn't keep on endorsing massive changes to the structure and nature of societies, because it's actually that's what is producing more racism. That's what's actually producing more tension.
I think we're both conservatives in different senses. I think I'm conservative with respect to our republic, and I think that you maybe are conservative with respect to demographics.
I actually think that if you like, obviously this is just a thought experiment, but just tomorrow, for example, if America tomorrow, like, the population just became, I don't know, say like 300 million
Somalis.
No, I don't know, like 300 million, like, I don't know, Chinese people, or 300 million.
Would it be different?
It would, of course, be different.
I'm not saying
because culture emanates from populations, and culture can. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. I don't believe in biological essentialism. I don't believe that, like, people are, like, racially defined by their DNA. I think culture changes over time. We see that in the West. Like, for example, the culture regarding, you know, women's rights 150 years ago was completely different to women's rights today. Culture does change over time, but it takes generations and it takes decades. And so if you rapidly change population in a really short time frame, like, for example, what we've seen in Australia and in Europe is that we've imported a lot of people who hate Jews into our countries. Like there was never really a native problem. Like, okay, for example, Australia now has, like, they're having Australia is launching a royal commission into anti-Semitism. There historically was not really ever this native tradition of anti-Semitism in Australia. Jews were part of the sort of founding of the country with the European settlement. And one of our greatest ever war heroes, General John Monash, was Jewish himself. And that actually meant, because of Monash's, there are people who argue because Monash was such a hero in World War I, it actually really dampened anti-Semitism in Australia. So we don't really have this native tradition of anti-Semitism, but we've had large amounts of people come in from Lebanon and from parts of the Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa who actually genuinely do hate Jews. And look at what happened at Bondi. It was literally an immigrant guy who did it. The son was not an immigrant. He was born in Australia, but he was raised by an immigrant, and he was raised to hate Jews, and he killed 15 people. And it was a massacre. And this is unfortunately a problem if you're importing people who do have extremely different values and ideologies, etc. So I actually don't view it necessarily as a racial thing. I view it as, look, it's culture. Culture's not. I don't believe people are fully blank slates. I don't think, like, I think culture takes changes, but it takes decades. It takes a long time.
I think that you're starting it from a position that people can understand, which is, we want people to assimilate culturally.
Yes.
And that
I worry if it's
differences
if it's massive volumes, it's very hard to assimilate people.
That's possible. But I think that you're going from there to something that you're taking an extra leap, which is that therefore our policy should be race conscious.
Not race conscious, but we should only allow migrants in numbers that can assimilate. And I think my family is actually a good example of this. I've been in Australia
as a white man, as a straight white man.
But our family were, like, in Australia. For my mum's side, it's 4 generations. My dad's side is 3 generations. And, like, basically, like, realistically, I basically don't really have much Greek culture in me. I don't speak Greek. I'm just basically fully Australian in terms of my culture. I grew up as an Australian. I fully identify with Australia. If there was ever a war between Greece and Australia, I'd fight for Australia. Like. And that's assimilation, but it takes place over a long time. And one of the reasons why my family was able to assimilate was because there weren't massive Greek ethnic enclaves that were completely cut off from the rest of society. Like Greeks today.
People said that about Italians in America.
I know, but also Italians came in such large numbers that eventually there was the Hortali. What was the exact act? 1920 something, where they did actually. You're talking. There was Immigration Restriction Act in the 1920s in America because.
Well, I'm not sure what you're referencing. Sorry.
There was an Immigration Restriction Act in the 1920s, I think, by Taft or something like that, where they were actually responding.
You're not talking about Taft-Hartley. That's different. That's like.
Oh, sorry, I might have missed it up, but there was immigration restriction in the 1920s in America because at that time they believed that there was so much. They wanted to pause immigration for a while to allow assimilation to take place because at that time there were massive ethnic enclaves in a lot of cities. And there was actually ethnically associated crime with Italians. Like, the reality is there was a lot of
Cosa Nostra.
Yeah, I know.
But in the long run...
yes.
What do people say? People say, wow, I love our Italian neighbors.
I know. But here's the thing,
though. It was worth it, right? It was just like it was worth it, in your mind, for those genocidal Anglo freaks to kill all the natives.
But I don't agree with... That's actually very race communist language.
Listen, I'm just fucking... But you know what I mean.
But the thing is that the reality is, and I'm saying this as a Greek Australian, like it took the Greek Australians probably like 2-3 generations to properly assimilate. It took the Italians like 2-3-4 generations to assimilate in America. It does actually take time, and look how culturally similar. Like this is the problem, right? If you look in the grand scheme of things, Italians and Greeks, I think, are not that culturally dissimilar from British or Anglos, right?
So says you now. Well,
I think.
But ask the people.
Okay.
When they were coming.
Okay, but here's the reality though, right? Like it is probably easier for a Greek or an Italian migrant to go to America than somebody who is, for example, of a completely different civilizational cultural background.
That's what they said about the Chinese immigration in the 1800s as well. But we have such a vibrant melting pot, racial melting pot of Asian cultures. We can get the most based Asian politicians from we love our but you have Rishi Sunak, who I think you said he's almost fully assimilated into British culture.
I was responding to Nazis who were saying he was not British, and I was saying no, he's actually British. He's
almost
basically
fully assimilated.
Well, he's basically fully assimilated. That's
basically
true.
fully, but not fully.
Well, he is
because he's brown.
I didn't say that.
But then why would he not be?
I was actually Pisco. I was actually responding to the Nazis who were saying that he could never be British.
Right, and so responding to them, you conditioned it. You didn't say he's a fully British. You said
he's fully British culturally. He is fully British culturally.
Oh, but racially not Anglo. Obviously.
Well, he's obviously racially not English.
Yes.
But
okay,
like English is an ethnicity.
So in terms of immigration policy, you do want to see Democrats or center left people take a stronger stance in reducing it.
You have to reduce migration to a level that you can actually assimilate people. And I think also there should be an emphasis on, culturally similar countries. Because I think it is difficult, when I believe that China is its own civilization. I believe that, Islam is its own civilization. And they've had amazing civilizational achievements. I was at the American Natural History Museum. I was walking through the Muslim section, of Muslim history. And it described, it's funny because that museum is a little bit cancelled. It's like maybe 100 years old or whatever. But I was going through, it was describing Islam as a civilization that had amazing achievements. And it's true. Like they helped invent mathematics and all these things. This is literally true.
Some of the
yeah, I agree.
Texts.
I do believe civilizations actually exist. Like Islam is a civilization. I was walking through the China section and
Persian civilization.
Yeah, Persian civilization exists. I was walking through the China section. Everyone knows I've got this long history of opposing the Chinese Communist Party or whatever. But I was going through the China section. I was like, it is an amazing. I did think to myself, it's like an amazing civilization. It genuinely is. And I do think people can assimilate. It is possible to assimilate. But when you come
Western loyalists,
like my primarily, I identify as a Westerner. I love the West.
So
and I do think people from different civilizations can come to the West and assimilate. I just think we have to do it in a manageable way where people can assimilate.
And legally. Has to be done legally.
And legally, yeah.
Yeah. So
my brother legally immigrated to America, and I would not have, if he wanted to do it illegally, I would have opposed that. I don't think anybody should do it.
Would you have called ICE on him?
No, I wouldn't have called, I don't know.
So another one of these, people who are against law and order, you're not even going to call.
You wouldn't call ICE on your own brother.
Yeah.
But look, at the end of the day, he immigrated legally. He's an Australian guy. But if he had done it illegally, I would have told him that's fucking wrong, and I would have said to him, I don't support you. He did do it legally, but it's true. If he'd done it illegally, I wouldn't have told him. I would have said you're fucking doing the wrong thing.
Open borders. Can you at least give us that? Their Democrats are for open borders. I mean, you cited Bernie as one of your inspirations. Early on.
Okay. Here's the thing, though, right? Here's the thing.
You still respect Bernie? You still respect him?
In some ways, I do strongly disagree with him on others. But you know what's amazing? If you looked at that famous exchange between him and Ezra Klein, though, that exchange was famous because Ezra Klein, who's kind of you would have to admit, he's probably a leading sort of intellectual figure of the moderate
New York Times, so the chagrin of many lefty communists.
And he's not a communist or whatever, but he treated as crazy that Bernie said that there should be a border.
No, wait, no. I didn't actually watch the interview, but I watched the clip of Bernie saying, you got to give Trump credit for the border.
No. I'm talking.
That's stupid, Bernie.
No, I'm actually talking about back in 2015. So Ezra Klein was interviewing Bernie in the 2016 primary, and he said what do you think of open borders? And Bernie just instinctually was like, that's a crazy idea. It's a Koch brother idea. And Ezra Klein, if you look at it,
what did he say?
Ezra was shocked. He was like, really, are you sure? And because him and Matthew Iglesias, they've come around. Obviously, it's such a politically toxic idea that they've now said, we don't support it anymore. But there's a time where, Matthew Iglesias and Ezra Klein were both arguing that, basically, immigration is always good. There's never a period where it could ever be too much. And like Iglesias was obviously like saying there should be 1 billion Americans.
Yeah, but they come about it from different traditions.
And Ezra actually,
I want to mention this. They come about it from different traditions. You have the Bernie tradition, which is open borders is a trick by capital. It's a trick by capital to depress wages and reduce worker rights. Then you have, and then I want to the distillation from Ezra, which I thought was great, from an interview with Vivek Ramaswamy, who I want to get your take on as well. Vivek, I want to quickly say, I don't like the gropers being mean to Vivek based on his race. I think Vivek is very culturally American. I think he's very culturally American. You say that.
I do think that about
virtue
Vivek.
Of what? Because he speaks with no accent.
No, he's somebody.
He went to law school. And
his full loyalty is to America, and he obviously identifies strongly with American culture.
So, okay, so then that's what it is. So to be an American, that's just I want to.
I think the core thing is you have to have like your primary loyalty has to be to the adopted country, to the point that you'd be willing to like literally fight for it if your home country was going to war. Like look at Eisenhower, right? Eisenhower, German name, fought the Germans in World War II. That was the prime example of assimilation. Literally the prime example. Like America's leading general in the Western Front in World War II was a German guy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So you've got to have that level of loyalty, and you've got to basically strongly identify with the Western culture.
So I identified one virtue of anti-open borders from Bernie, which is a capital focused.
There's that capital thing.
From the MAGA perspective, let me finish this. Ezra charts out 3 different sort of impulses.
His was like a utilitarian thing. Like he believed. I think Ezra believes in. Back then he believed in open borders.
Ezra characterizes these different strains of anti-immigrant thought. From the perspective of Trump, it's they're poisoning the blood of the people.
I didn't say poisoning the blood of the people.
I know you didn't say that.
Yeah.
From the perspective of someone like J.D. Vance, it's focused on domestic labor from the from the perspective of protectionism. In that sense, it's somewhat aligned to the Bernie vision, but a little bit more focused on Americans as opposed to the struggle between class that is more focus of Bernie Sanders. And then finally, you have the Vivek strain, which I'm seeing you more strongly align with. And that has to do with more like, it needs to be orderly, it needs to be slow, it needs to be legal, but it needs to be in sufficient numbers to help us and to help Americans.
And it has to assimilate.
And there needs to be assimilation.
Yeah.
Vivek is losing that argument.
I agree. He is losing that. Look, I'm against the gropers. He's losing it to the gropers, and I'm against the gropers.
But the administration isn't going with the Vivek strategy as much as people might claim that they're trying to do that.
I think Vivek did not help his own case by going out and saying that like he said that thing. That high school thing where it was possible for many people to interpret that, and even I don't hate Vivek, but I interpret it this way, that he was kind of saying that white Americans were lazy. And I think that's pretty bad. And I think that's not a sign of, good faith. I think that's a pretty strong element as well. I think people
sometimes there's this like fucking victim complex from white Americans and this fucking like
No, Pisco.
I just want to say I want to soy out and be a lefty right now.
This is so annoying.
Oh my god, the poor white people. What are we like? Can we stop babying?
But that's you for other.
What the fuck?
That's you for all non-whites.
No, I don't.
That's you for all non-whites.
No, I do. When do I say? Oh, I mean, there was a time I think when it was the kind of identity politics. I never agree with identity politics. I'm not like that. But the kind of like you were mean to whiteys because you said something about high school bullies. Get over it.
Like the Democrats.
Get over it.
The Democrats spent like mainstream Democrats spent 10 years telling like young white men that they were evil from birth.
Mainstream Democrats?
Yes, many mainstream Democrats.
Who the fuck said that?
Like, dude, like Ilhan Omar said that like white men were the greatest threat to the country. And,
okay, you picked the most extreme example.
She's a mainstream Democrat.
She's on the farthest left of the House majority. If you go to your fucking Republican caucus, as though I see the NASCAR shirt and I'm just, I
just thought it was cool, the colors.
Yeah, we'll see. But do you know what the fucking farthest righties are saying in the MAGA caucus? It's like kill all the Palestinians to a baby.
I think Reddy finds disgusting for that.
Yeah, so you can find whatever, but the mainstream people, they're white guys. Biden won. He's a white guy. Obama, okay, he's black. He's definitely black. But white people loved Obama.
Dude, here's where you're wrong, right? There was a big thing in the Democratic primary in 2020 that Biden shouldn't get it because he was white. That was a big thing.
That was the thing among the Democrats saying like, oh, we don't think the country's ready for a black president. And they say this about women too.
No, sorry, it's not about black. There was a significant sort of like identity politics faction of the Democrats in the 2020 primary who didn't want Biden to get it because he was white.
There were some people.
There were people like that. But guess
what?
And I know they lost.
They voted for that motherfucker, and it came down to Bernie. You consider Jews white?
Yeah, of course I
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Bernie?
That's a huge distinction that I have with the group. Is like,
Great.
they think that Jews aren't white, and I actually don't understand that. Like, I genuinely,
You don't understand that, really?
I don't know. Like,
You understand that?
every Jewish person that I've
You
ever like really
understand
interacted. No, but growing up, like, there's very few Jews in Australia, and so growing up, like, I always just thought Jews were white people.
But you know why? Do you have an idea why they don't consider Jews white?
Yeah, I understand. Like,
Because they do believe in race.
Yeah, and I don't. But
as an essential
but I actually think like
and predictive set.
look. I think the funny thing is that like, look, race is a very amorphous category, and there are a lot of Hispanic people who are white.
You think I'm white?
I think you're basically white.
You motherfucker! I never put it down. I just put Hispanic.
Yeah, but it's like
People would see me and
I
wasn't treated white by the other kids. I was treated as the kid with the thermos with the frijoles and like with the bushy eyebrows.
I don't know. Like, I look at it like my Nigerian friend, he's black, and I just look at it as like, if someone's not black, they're probably white. I mean, obviously there's distinctions where it's like there's
So
obviously
it's very
Indians.
black and white, yeah.
There's distinctions
And
where it's like
Indians. Black and
Indians
white and Indians. I don't remember that one.
look, there obviously Hispanic is a very amorphous category. There are Hispanics who are like mostly non-white, and there are Hispanics that are white as well.
Right, but they
I actually do think whiteness is like a pretty socially constructed thing. Look, I always joke around. Here's the funny thing, right? I always joke around that Nick Fuentes isn't white, but to be honest, he actually is white.
because he looks white and he talks white.
But he's like white. Like, he's like, I don't know. Like, if you look at someone and they look white, then I think they're white. Like, and growing up, most people just always treat me as white, so I just thought, okay, I'm a white person.
And I see you, and I see a Mediterranean fisherman. I see someone.
I'm like
climbing up.
I'm not like Anglo white. I fully know that I'm not Anglo white.
You're
Like,
Sisyphus pushing up the boulder on Mount Olympus. That's what I see.
It's like spicy white. It's a little bit like Hispanics, I guess. There are some Hispanics who are like spicy white.
But the Angloids who founded this country would have seen you and been like, "What are you doing in our country, boy?" Like, that's what they would have. Well, by the way, do your best Southern accent right now.
Shit, I can't really do Southern accents, to be honest. Y'all, I don't know. I can't really do it. To be honest. I can't do Southern that much. But like, look, obviously, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, there was extremely like racially fucked attitudes. I'm not someone who's advocating slavery, man. I'm not saying go back to like 400 years ago.
All right, let's talk about the strikes before we run out of time. I'm conscious of your time.
But how do we get into this whole thing about like?
I asked why you're white, and you're like, "I'm white because I think I'm white." You sound like those trans advocates who are like, "Well, you're trans as long as you believe you're trans."
No, look,
you're a woman if you believe you're a woman.
I just have a pretty expansive concept of white. I think Greeks are white. I think Italians are white. I think Jews are white. I think a lot of Hispanics.
I think Nigerians are white.
Well, Nigerians obviously aren't white.
Why?
Well, Nigerians wouldn't say that they're white. My Nigerian friend.
So whatever you say you are, is what you're saying.
No, obviously, like there's actual. I mean, obviously, people do look different from each other, but like,
and you look different than an Anglo.
Yeah, I agree that I look different to an Anglo, but like, I don't know. Like, look, my family was accepted into Australia under the White Australia policy. They did phrenology on my ancestors' skulls. They determined that the Cypriots were white, and so that's it. That's the conclusion from the 1950s.
Speaking of attacking and distinguishing white people from brown,
I agree with one of the person in your chat who said someone said race is a construct. Like, yeah, it's like it is pretty much a construct. Even Mussolini said like race is mostly a theory.
Even Mussolini.
Have you seen M Son of the Century? It's a really good show.
Say that one more time. What's the thing?
Have you seen that Italian series on like Mussolini and like Hassan Piker?
I saw the first.
It was actually it was a really well directed, great show.
You should organize a debate with Hassan Piker.
He would never debate me.
Why not?
I don't know. He hates me. I would debate him, but I don't think he would debate me.
What would you want to debate?
Anything. Communism, China. I'd love to debate him on China. Like, I've got so much more knowledge on China than Hassan Piker. 100%. Like, I literally studied this shit for years when I was like, my main thing was activism against the Chinese government. I literally would pull out dozens of books from the library and just read about Chinese history and politics. I know way more about China than Hassan. I'd love to debate him on that.
And his visit you felt was a little too fawning.
It was massively fawning. He cried tears of happiness because someone gave him like a Mao's red book. And
he's a communist.
He's a communist. He's literally a Marxist. And you know what's really funny about it though? I think realistically, if you look at this dispassionately, like China is the most fascist country in the world today. If you actually just like look at
China is the most fascist country.
Well, if you look at their policies, like
what about North Korea?
Oh no, actually, North Korea is another level. You are right, North Korea is another level. But China like has the essential characteristics of a fascist society. Their economy is essentially corporatist, where basically like everything is subordinated. Like corporatist. It's a corporatist economy. They have no trade unions.
We're about to do the debate. This is all the pre-debate banter. We're about to get into it. All right.
There was also debates. We disagreed strongly.
We were disagreeing, but hang on. All right. So
it's harder when you're in person. I remember when I previously
we're about to do it. I just
when I did my previous debate with Pisco over the computer, there was a lot more young. But when you're in person, it's hard. It's hard.
It's not hard for me. All right. We're gonna get into it. I'll start with my case, and you tell me what you disagree with. I think that Maduro is a bad person.
Okay.
I think Maduro should not lead Venezuela. That said, the strikes against Venezuela constituted an act of war. They were not authorized. They were illegal. I also think that the people who are running the operation, because they're not motivated by humanitarian and democracy building impulses, that they're unlikely to achieve that outcome. And they're more likely to just either destabilize the country or cause it to be sort of under a more or just as equally repressive regime, which they have not displanted. And because of that, I think it's unjustified. They broke the law. They are trying to extract resources and benefits, and there's no clear and obvious benefit to the Venezuelan people, given that the regime is still effectively in power by the same people who were torturing and suppressing the Venezuelan people. And given the lack of good prospect for any sort of good regime change, let alone a legal action by America going forward, of course it's wrong.
Well, look, the funny thing is, even if Trump did do full scale regime change, you would also oppose that.
I'm giving you multiple reasons.
I know, yeah.
So for me, the constitutional issue largely resolves it, because I don't want Trump, in the context in which Trump is claiming more and more emergency authority on the basis of international conflict, on wars and stuff. I would have to be a crazy person to say, yeah, I kind of want Trump to just take the war power too. What? So he can claim a state of exception in America and throw me in jail? No. Fuck no.
No, okay. I don't
That's
think...
what you're... You don't see what's going on. You don't actually think it's a threat. I don't think Hassan's a threat. I don't think you think Trump is a threat. I think you're a Trump supporter. Who the fuck am I talking about? You support Trump.
Critical support.
A critical supporter.
In the same way that Hassan Parker lends critical support to the Democrats.
But Trump is fucking this country up, man.
I don't agree with everything he's ever said or done.
No. He's fucking it up royally. And he's trying to turn us into China. He's trying to turn us into Hungary. He's trying to turn us into a fucking authoritarian state, which runs on his whim. That's why he's doing these backroom deals with universities, with law firms, trying to stomp on people's rights, using ISIS's personal Gestapo. Of course, what kind of madman would support Trump claiming more authorities to use the military when he's already using the military domestically against his political enemies? You'd have to be a crazy person, Drew. And so I have to ask you, are you crazy?
No, okay, listen. I think the structure of the Venezuela Maduro snatch operation is actually very similar to this what Obama did, where they took out bin Laden without informing the Pakistanis.
It's not similar at all. I'll tell you why it's not similar, but you can go.
Well, look, a previous Democratic president, Biden, put in place a bounty on Maduro's head. They treated Maduro like he was effectively at war with the United States. I believe that Maduro effectively was at war with the United States through narco trafficking, through allying with Hezbollah and Iran, their alliance with Russia. And this was a brutal dictatorship that killed hundreds of protesters, hundreds of people throughout the years. Anybody who opposed Maduro in Venezuela was just shot. They were either disappeared into a black site or shot. And the Venezuelan people voted democratically to remove Maduro from office. It was established by almost every authority on earth.
I agree with that.
Including left-wing governments like Brazil and Chile, that Maduro completely stole the election. And so the democratic will of the Venezuelan people was thwarted. And the reason why polling shows that the majority of Venezuelans, both in the diaspora and also in Venezuela, and also a majority of people all across Latin America supported the Maduro snatch operation, is because he was a dictator who was operating extra legally for like 10 years, no recourse to the rule of law, killed and intimidated his opponents. Everything that you've accused Trump of wanting to do, Maduro had already done.
Yeah.
Many times over.
Yep.
Just slaughtered the opposition, completely rigged elections.
Yes.
And here was like basically a bloodless way to remove the dictator. And I know
not
that
bloodless.
Well,
relatively.
There was one civilian death. It was literally one.
Okay, you don't consider the blood.
And I think that's wrong. Look, it's sad whenever a civilian dies, but if you're telling me you can remove...
Just don't say bloodless when like dozens and dozens of people died.
Okay, the vast majority of the people that died in the operation were literally
given
military.
the normal conduct of war.
Okay,
relatively bloodless.
But the vast majority of the people that were killed in the operation were literally military figures.
That's what I'm just saying.
Yep.
Just don't say.
Like, I remember there was a really funny tweet by Ryan Grimm, who's like a leftist, and he was like asking us to feel sad for this like literal Cuban like military sergeant. He was like, he had a wife and kid, and I was like, yeah, he's a fucking military.
I don't know about that. But you wouldn't say that about American military service people. Just by the way, and by the way,
well, I'm on the side of America.
I know.
You're allowed to have a team.
I know you're allowed to have a team, but I'm just saying there are times in which I desperately disagree with military action taken by administration. And obviously, I am an American, and so I have greater priority for Americans. But even when I think that military officials or military personnel, by the way, I think that when the military personnel are attacking some of these boats, that it constitutes murder or at best a war crime. And if they were to die in that line of duty, I wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, no big deal. Like I'm just being honest that sometimes
it's different. I support you as servicemen. I don't support Cuban military officials who protect.
What I'm noting though is the complete disregard for the.
I disregard the lives of Venezuelan and Cuban military personnel.
But it's not just
I straight up will admit that.
No, it's a weaponized care for Venezuelans only in the context in which you're able to use it as a shield. And only in the context,
I care about Venezuela.
Same thing with the Iranian people. Same thing with the Iranian people. I want to address the major points. Okay. First I
want the people killing the Venezuelan civilians and the Iranian civilians to be killed. I want the people doing.
I understand that.
I don't care about their lives.
What I'm telling you is, it's a weaponized like, oh, we don't care about them at all. We have no consideration whatsoever. But I want to address the major points. The first one,
if you're an Iranian regime,
the major points. The major.
Can I just say one thing though? If you're an Iranian regime official or Venezuelan regime official, I don't care about your life. Straight up. Okay. You're killing innocent people all the time. You're killing thousands of people to stay in power. You're a brutal dictatorship.
So what people say that about ICE officers?
No, because I support America and their legal...
You support ICE? You support ICE? You support ICE?
I support the legal immigration enforcement authorities.
You support the law now. So you support the law now. So if it would be illegal, would you be against it?
What do you mean?
You just said that it's different for ICE because you support...
Well, I support America, so I don't want you to kill ICE agents.
So it's not on the basis of law. It's the basis because you support America. That's it.
Well, I support America defeating its enemies.
But not on the basis of compliance with the system that, by and large, you support. It's on the fact that it is America.
I think killing... Like, in the operation to kill Osama bin Laden, there were civilians who were killed.
Yeah, I know.
And it was still worth it. Because Osama bin Laden had killed so many Americans.
I'm not someone who says... I'm not this crazy... I don't know who you think you're talking to. I'm not someone who says that there's no notion of proportionality, that we can never have notions of casualties of war, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. All I'm trying to say is, and note is... be very conscious of when the blood and the humanitarian impulses with respect to certain groups are being used as a kind of what I think sometimes, not necessarily from you, but from other people, as a bad faith shield.
I think
as though
bullshit,
we care.
though.
No, because
what I hate about.
Let me ask you: Does Trump care about the well-being of the Venezuelan people? Yes or no?
I think he did.
No, he doesn't care.
I think he does because
you think he gives a fuck.
I think he does because he removed the dictator who was killing them.
No, is that why he removed them to help the Venezuelan people?
Maduro killed
Be
thousands of
honest.
people.
Be honest with yourself. So why is he
I don't
doing
think
this
it was
with
just
Greenland?
oil. I don't think it was just oil. I think it was ideological. I think he didn't want a communist regime in power.
This is your assessment of Trump. He really cares about the well-being of the Venezuelan people.
I do think he does.
Bullshit. You don't
the majority
believe that.
of the vast majority of Venezuelans agree with what he just did, and they love him for it.
Not do they love him for it. Does Trump care about the well-being? You can say that. I think
by definition he cares because he removed Maduro.
Okay, so if he goes into Greenland and you're going to say
I don't want him to go into Greenland.
No, but
that's different.
But how do you know he doesn't care about the people from Greenland?
Well, look, I don't think
you're so naive if you think Trump cares.
I don't think Trump cares about the people.
If he gave a fuck about them, why did he cut off all asylum until right after his strike?
The distinction is this, right? The people of Greenland are not oppressed, whereas the people of Venezuela are.
Yeah, why did he cut off Venezuelan asylum until right after he did his strike?
I mean,
if he cared about the people.
Look, it is. I actually disagree with it. I think Venezuelans should receive asylum for opposing.
No, I'm asking you to agree. Why did he cancel it?
But all I'm saying is, it is actually. You may disagree with it, but it is actually internally consistent, logically consistent to say we don't want these people coming to our country, but we will help them in their country.
So in terms of
like, for example, okay, I'll give you an example, right?
Oh my god.
One quick example. Yeah. Trump basically barred new green card processing from Iran and has barred people coming from Iran to America. That said, though, I do think
basically stopped all asylum.
But I do think he actually is protecting the Iranian protesters. If he does go in and bomb the Iranian regime, he's protecting them. Well, he should. Do you
think he gives a fuck about the Iranian people?
I think if he bombs the Iranian regime to stop them from killing the protesters, then I think he does.
Do you think he cares about the Palestinian people?
I base it off the outcome of his actions. The outcome of
can't do that,
the outcome
'cause
of
we don't know that yet.
The outcome of his action was, look, at the end of the day, he did actually stop the war in Israel-Palestine, which I think was good. I think the Gaza conflict was terrible. It was dragging on for so long. It was horrible. He actually put a lot of pressure on Bibi Netanyahu to stop that.
And do you think that Trump?
It is actually true.
Trump actually cares about the Palestinian people.
I don't know if he he wakes up crying for them, but he
doesn't give a shit.
But the outcome of his action was it helped the Palestinian people. Look, he put a lot of pressure on Bibi Netanyahu. He literally bullied Netanyahu into stopping the war. Netanyahu was keeping it going forever.
Okay, I'm going to go to... let me finish this entire thing so I can address some of the arguments you made. Yep. The first is on the comparison to Obama's drone strike, either of al-Awlaki or the fight against Osama bin Laden and what they did in over Pakistan in that capture. Both of those were authorized and legal, and both of them were justified as well. They were going after rogue agents who attacked America, for who Congress had authorized the use of force. And in the context of international law principles, I actually don't know if there's, as applicable here, an international law principle that I can think about which would prevent the kind of action that was taken here against, even if I were to say that international law is the end-all be-all. I don't say it's the end-all be-all. I think that U.S. law, though, for me is very, 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 very important.
Can I ask you one question?
And it was in compliance with U.S. law to take those strikes against both al-Awlaki from both an authorization perspective and due process because he was a citizen, and obviously Osama bin Laden, who orchestrated or helped orchestrate 9/11. So those are, on the legality front, no comparison whatsoever. And I want you to concede to that, actually. They're totally different.
Sorry, I have to admit, I did get a bit distracted. Can I just ask you one?
No, you have to listen to what I say, you motherfucker piece of shit.
Okay, quickly say it again.
All right. Sorry. They're obviously very legally different. In the context of the strikes against al-Awlaki and the strikes against Osama, those were legally authorized by Congress, the authorization of use of military force.
So the critical factor is the authorization by Congress.
Wait, hang on. But also, in terms of the nature of the response and the political ramifications,
Can you get that comment up? Where
Which one?
Trump got rid of Maduro and told that woman if she didn't play ball, she was next. It's pure mafia tactics.
You're not listening.
Yeah, sorry, you go up. You go up.
It's up, though. We have it right
I think that's a base comment. I agree. I think using mafia tactics against mafia regimes is good. But you keep going.
Okay. A mob boss is good for president.
No, I'm saying regimes like Maduro don't respect law whatsoever. So the only thing that they respect...
But we respect U.S. law.
Okay, so here's my question, right? If for you the critical function is, did Congress legalize or authorize this operation? If Trump did go to Congress and say, "Will you authorize my operation?"
I would say
no.
No.
What's your point then?
No,
Why? Why?
No.
Why would you be against that?
But let's deal with the argument.
That's
every
such a good
part
question,
of it.
Why?
No, I will. I'm not afraid of your arguments, Drew. I knew where you were going. I'm honest enough. I've had these discussions before. I'm not afraid to get into the policy argument, putting aside the legality.
Okay.
But let's finish the legality conversation first.
Okay.
So you agree the case against al-Awlaki and against Osama bin Laden, very, very different. There's specific congressional authorization for the use of military force.
Sure.
Okay. So
I'm not fully abreast of all congressional measures regarding Venezuela. There have been congressional methods against Venezuela in the past. I'd have to probably study it, but
they're different though.
I'm willing to concede that it's probably more clear cut the Osama bin Laden or
and then here's the key question. Then we can move on to if it were legal.
Yeah.
If it were illegal under U.S. law, not international communist law, under U.S. law, would you support Trump violating the Constitution of the United States to do this action?
I just strongly disagree with the premise because I think
no. I think it's a conditional.
I think the president.
The hypothetical is a conditional. If you thought it was illegal, would you be against it under U.S. law?
Look, I'm against
conditional. Hypothetical.
Okay, I'm against.
Answer.
Yes.
Yes.
In general, I'm against anything that is illegal under U.S. law.
Okay.
That said, I just reject that premise because I don't believe that it is fundamentally illegitimate or illegal.
I know you reject the premise that it is illegal, but I'm glad that you agree that if you found it to be illegal, you would be against it. I think it is illegal.
Look, overall, I agree with you. I don't want the president to do illegal actions.
Okay.
I just don't think that it's illegal for the president to remove a dictator who was essentially at war with the United States.
We were at war with Venezuela?
Well, the Venezuelan regime treated itself as at war with the United States for years.
In what respect?
Narco trafficking.
So we're at war with China?
Well, there's a Cold War with China.
Are we at war with China?
It is a Cold War.
Are we at war with China?
It's a Cold War.
In the same respect that we're at war with Venezuela, were we at war with China?
I mean, yes,
in a way. And we're at war with
but I wouldn't.
In the same way as Venezuela.
I wouldn't support using force.
Because of nukes.
Yes.
Because
that's
so I'm going to change it.
Because military.
I know where you're going. So I'm going to change it.
Power is an iron law of international politics.
So we are at war with China. Are we at war with Mexico?
No.
Why?
because the administration in Mexico, I don't believe, is fundamentally hostile to the United States of America. But I do believe that China's administration and Venezuela's administration are fundamentally hostile.
So it's not. It's not about the introduction of drugs.
Oh, here's a good question. Okay, here's a good question. Right? Somebody brought up North Korea. North Korea is not in a declared state of war with the United States, but it definitely treats itself as at war with the United States. Would you agree with that?
It treats itself as it's. I don't know if it treats it.
It essentially.
We don't have diplomatic relationships with
I mean,
North
it essentially does.
There's an armistice with the North and the South, and I think they probably consider America to be an enemy.
That's the thing. Like China,
they do cyber attacks.
This is actually true, right? Chinese government does cyber attacks against America all the time.
Yeah.
In their official propaganda for internal consumption, they regard America as the top enemy. Xi Jinping regards America as like a massive ideological enemy.
Yeah, but we're not implicitly with China.
There's not.
These
I know that
mean things. You guys are trying to change what words mean.
I know that you're not in an open state of war, but there's certainly a Cold War. Of course there is.
And maybe there's a Cold War with Venezuela and with Cuba, but that doesn't mean we were in a war. You know,
sure,
we weren't in a war.
Maybe not in a shooting war with Venezuela.
Yeah,
but there was.
So America started this.
But no. I would say that Maduro started this by killing the protesters, and I think. Honestly, responsibility to protect. Seriously, if there's a regime that's killing its own people like that, I think they just have no sovereignty. They have no legality.
Yeah, but don't you find it?
Okay, here's a good question, Pisco. What gives Maduro authority to remain in power?
I don't. With more respect, under U.S. law. Under what?
Like, in the entire world, like he.
You have to specify. What do you mean by authority?
He was an illegal ruler
under Venezuela law, U.S. law. What are you talking about?
I mean, like
authority with respect to what? I'm asking the question. What do you mean by authority? What do you mean by authority? Moral authority? Ethical authority?
Moral authority.
I think he has no moral authority to govern Venezuela.
Okay, so why was he there then?
Because he has the power, he has the guns.
Exactly. And we have the guns, so let's take out the dictator.
But that doesn't follow. Yes,
it does.
That doesn't follow.
It does, because what I said, Pisco, and this is literally my standard. If
you asked a descriptive claim, how is he in power? And you try to jump to, well, then we should do X. They're different.
But this is the difference, right? I believe that if a regime fundamentally just like... If a regime is it's a brutal dictatorship that does not respect the rule of law whatsoever and just goes around killing people, I just don't believe that we should go, oh, well, international law says we can't do anything.
I didn't say, no, this is
not even international law.
U.S. law.
Okay.
U.S. law is what we're talking about right now. U.S. law.
Okay. Well, the amazing thing is that you said even if it was authorized, you'd oppose it.
Yeah, we'll get there, but at least I'm glad that you agree that given that I find and that I determine that
it's obviously preferable if they get authorization, and I'd prefer it if they got authorization.
Sorry. But do you think I'm making that weak statement that I prefer they get authorization?
Well, you're saying
I'm not a little bitch like you who says that. I'm saying that
I genuinely think in the removal of Maduro as a dictator, the ends justify the means.
Even if it were illegal under the Constitution?
I don't think it's illegal under the Constitution.
That's not what I asked. If! Come on, the Greeks know about fucking... You're Socratic. You know Socrates.
I told you. I told you that I don't agree with illegal actions, but I just believe, by definition, what Trump did is not illegal.
By definition?
Yes.
By definition, it's not illegal?
Yeah, I think Trump has the authority to do it.
By definition. I'm asking not by... So you're saying his actions entail their legality? Now you're starting to sound like a fucking tanky. What are you saying?
I think Trump had the legal authority to do what he did.
That's not what I said.
He ordered the raid and it happened.
No, the question isn't, did he have the authority?
The command authority, the commander expected the chain authority.
Greeks are supposed to be good at hypotheticals. They're logical. They're rational. Your people have a great tradition. You come from a good stock of debaters, democratic enjoyers, philosophy enjoyers. So just use your blood and soil roots to come to this the question. Understand it.
Someone said he's Turkish though. We'll say.
Are you Turkish?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, well, the Turks. But speaking of Turks and Australians, the less said the better, right? Gallipoli.
Yeah,
you cry at Gallipoli?
Yeah, true. I do cry over Gallipoli.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
All right. So the question isn't, did Trump have the authority? The question is, if he did not, would you support it?
I have to. Okay, I'll just be straight up honest. In the isolated case of Venezuela, I'm not going to say that because he did it in Venezuela, he's allowed to do that in other cases, because I don't think, just like in 99% of cases, I'm against him acting illegally. But in this one, I disagree that it was illegal, but even if it was illegal, I would support it.
Okay.
Because I think Maduro was so brutal. He killed so many of his own people. He was such a brutal, disgusting dictator, and he had no moral or legal authority to exist, and so he should have been removed.
So my issue, and
here's the thing: if Biden had done this, I would have fully supported it as well, because I'm not being partisan. This is literally not even about Trump.
I believe that you would.
I literally would have fully supported.
I believe that you would.
Yeah,
but I would have been against Biden in that context. So I'm not just a hack to. But all right, before we get to the policy of if it were legal and why I would be against it still, you have to understand my structural concern here, which is I don't like the president deciding when it's okay and when it's not okay to follow the Constitution.
Look, unfortunately, as a result
of dangerous precedent.
Look, you know, you've gone to law school. You know the concept of the imperial presidency. You know that this has been going on for like 80 plus years, and Democrat presidents have done it as well.
So
there's been a massive expansion of all executive authority and all presidential power, essentially.
Yeah, this one is particularly depraved, in my opinion.
You actually say that removing Maduro is depraved?
No. The way that the intervention was actually done from the perspective of a structural powers consideration.
Do you really think that removing Maduro is depraved?
Stop.
Okay.
You're trying to twist my words.
Wait, so you're talking about the procedure was depraved.
The power and the question of authority, that is a particularly depraved way of handling the action. Okay. Would I be in favor of Maduro being toppled? Yes, of course. 100%. And I think Maduro is a horrible person.
Is there ever a scenario where America could help topple him that you would be support?
Yes.
Okay, what's that scenario?
So I do think that there are certain justifications for humanitarian intervention. I would want them to be authorized.
I mean, he's killed so many of his own people.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that. I'm not a dove in the sense of I never want to intervene, okay? There are different scenarios. I think we should have intervened in Rwanda.
I agree with that. I fully agree with that.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not someone who says never use the military.
Because that's the thing, right? Like, if Rwanda had been illegal, I still would have supported America going in to stop the genocide.
Okay. Well, that's a tougher consider. I can say at some level.
Actually, that's a good question.
At some level of pain, I would grant that. At some level of pain. But it would have to be in the tens of millions of deaths. That's how much I value America.
Well, look, Rwanda was not tens of millions.
I know. That's why I'm fortunate. Because think about this, right? COVID. How many people did COVID kill? Right?
Like, I think it was like 50 million across the world, probably.
But in America, it was like 1 million plus.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people. That's more than that's like more than the Civil War, right? We fought a civil war about 1 million.
Yeah.
For me to really we bled so much for our country. We worked so hard to build our society the way it is. How much would you give to stop us from turning into a tyrannical fuckland like China? A lot. Yes. It was worth the blood that we paid. And that blood is a debt, and we owe it to the people who put their lives down.
No, look, I actually agree with you. I agree with you in principle. I just think you should be a bit more flexible. Like, I think there is just certain clear-cut situations where, like, okay, I'll give you 3, right? Like, Rwandan genocide, Anwar al-Awlaki, and, like, Maduro, where it's like, okay, maybe not officially by the letter of the law, but, like, I think it is such a morally extreme good case to stop this horrible thing.
I think you need to show me tens of millions. That might seem heartless. Okay, but that's really where I'm at in terms of magnitude. Okay, and you can't.
Rwanda was like 900,000 dead. So
no.
Okay, so okay,
just go to Congress. Okay, go to Congress.
Okay, let's go back to the 1990s. Say Bill Clinton is the president of the United States of America at the time, and he's got intelligence that the massacres have started. Like 20, 30,000 people have been massacred overnight in Rwanda. If he acted before getting congressional approval to try to stop that genocide, you'd oppose it.
Yeah, so I think that there are some conditions in which the president can preemptively act, but it has to be an attack on the United States. It can't be an attack outwards. And Congress, if it wanted to, could give some authority for the president to have more flexibility in those kinds of situations. I'm not saying that Congress couldn't authorize that, but they haven't.
Congress has not declared...
They haven't done that with the War Powers Resolution.
Congress has not declared war since 1945. So does that mean, therefore, that, like, for example, the first Gulf War was wrong?
No, just because there's no declaration of war doesn't mean that there's not statutory authorization. Okay. And you know that. Okay. And you know that because the AUMF isn't a declaration of war necessarily. It's statutory authorization. But putting that aside, right? It is a magnitude, and I will bite that bullet every day. I'm sorry. The decisional sort of moment belongs to the American people, and that isn't given to the president. And I'm not going to give up our entire country. That's what it means to be a patriot, is to be loyal to our system. And at some price, I would say, okay, fuck it, just do it. But it's in the tens of millions. All right, so let me now deal with the case.
I just think okay, I'll just try to explain my position, right? Like I love the American vision of liberty and the freedoms associated with the Constitution, but I don't believe that we should worship the procedure necessarily.
It's not the procedure.
I know you'll disagree. I'm just saying though, right? Like there's the living spirit of American constitutionalism and liberty and freedom and stuff like that. And I think that's different to being do you have the exact congressional authority to kill Osama bin Laden in Pakistan on the night of blah, blah, blah in 2011 in Abbottabad?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, you have authority.
Well, yes, but at the same time, they had not have any authorization to,
No, yeah, Congress can authorize things more generally. They can say, we'll give the president this flexibility.
Great point here, right? There was a risk Obama knew this when he authorized the raid. He knew that there was a risk because they were not telling the Pakistani authorities. If the Pakistani military had mobilized, they would have had to kill Pakistani military officials to get the SEALs out of Pakistan.
Yeah.
And
as a consequence of the military action that was authorized.
But that's being a little bit like, because
it's not.
Yeah, but you could argue that if the American Navy SEALs had fired upon Pakistani military officials in the course of killing Osama bin Laden, like where's the authorization to go to war with Pakistan?
Yeah, no,
but I still think it would have been justified
if there was truly a logical relationship. And this is, by the way, what Trump is arguing for the execution of the warrant, that the military force is just like a kind of like side part of executing the federal law enforcement power. So just keep that in mind. Trump is arguing
I know
that the military stuff is just like a
he points to narco-terrorism, etc.
Right. So, and we agree that's bullshit, right?
I don't think it's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
They were trafficking.
Trump cares about drug trafficking in that sense.
I think he does.
This is about drug trafficking. You think that?
I think it's part of it. I mean, look, the Biden administration indicted him for that.
No, I'm not saying that. No, did he go after Maduro in this way because he's so concerned of drug trafficking?
You're asking me to look inside the heart of Donald J. Trump. Did Biden care about drug trafficking when he indicted
people you don't like all the time?
But did Biden care about the drug trafficking charges
I think he did.
Okay, I think Trump did.
But we're not talking about the indictment, which was, first of all, the first indictment happened under Trump's first term. That was the first indictment.
Okay, and did Biden reverse that?
No. But putting that aside, that's not the question. The question isn't on the virtue of the indictment. Do I think that Trump was trying to cares about narco trafficking or whatever? It's, did he take this action because of the drug trafficking? After he just pardoned a fucking drug trafficker.
Okay, that pardoning was wrong. I agree with you on that.
So in what sense do we have a cocaine problem in America? No, we don't.
A little bit.
Some people overdose on fentanyl-laced cocaine. It's marginal compared to the overall numbers. We don't have a cocaine problem.
The biggest problem is fentanyl.
Yes. That's what we're talking. Okay. So
and I don't know, you're arguing that Trump doesn't actually care about fentanyl? I think they do care about fentanyl.
He didn't. Come on, he didn't really do this because of drugs, dude. If you buy that, you're naive.
I think it was there was like a scaffold of different pretext. Arguments.
It's the pretext.
Well, Biden apparently believed it was serious enough pretext to put a fucking warrant on his head.
Yeah, I mean there's a warrant on Putin from the ICC. So a warrants can be issued because of things that different states or bodies care about, no doubt. That doesn't necessarily mean that when the ICC issues a warrant that they are requesting someone to go into Russia to apprehend Putin to provide him to the court. All I'm trying to say is they're different things.
Look, you've repeatedly placed your emphasis on U.S. law over international law. Well, under U.S. law, Trump was.
I sworn an oath to uphold U.S. law, not international law.
Yes, of course, and I agree with you on that. And look, under U.S. law, Maduro was an indicted criminal.
Yeah, but I don't.
And it was an indicted outlaw under United States law.
I don't think U.S. law grants the president the authority to do this. So it's coming back to the same thing.
I don't understand this, right? So U.S. law can, under U.S. law, you can indict somebody as a felon,
and not have authority to go to the country to go get them. Yes.
Prevent the president from executing the warrant. That doesn't make sense to me.
So no one is preventing Trump from executing the warrant where it's enforceable. But just because you have a warrant doesn't mean U.S. law provides for the warrant to be executed at all times in any place in the universe. You understand that?
Yeah, sure.
So it could be another example of this, right?
Sure. I just think this is.
Wait. Let me finish the point, motherfucker. Piece of shit. Sorry. Sometimes I just go. The U.S. law will sometimes provide for a warrant, but the warrant doesn't mean you can do anything, right? The warrant will sometimes only provide for arrest, not searches. Or it'll say you're allowed to do this, but not that. Or you're allowed to arrest this person, but not that person. So just because there's a warrant doesn't mean you can do anything in the sun to do what you otherwise would be able to do on U.S. territory. But
sure,
let's put the U.S. law stuff aside. We're not going to agree right now.
Can I actually ask you why is it the case that you would even oppose? Okay, Trump.
This is why. I'll tell you why.
Okay, Trump goes to Congress and says, "I want the express congressional authority."
And they say, "Yes, we will." I would say,
but why would you oppose it? Why?
The reason I would oppose it is because I'm not convinced that Trump has as his goal the flourishing of democracy and new elections in Venezuela. If I were convinced that he did have that as his goal and that we were committed to spending billions of dollars to improve the lives of Venezuelans, to spend our treasure, right? Think about America first, to improve the infrastructure and democratic institutions of Venezuela, different argument.
Okay.
But let me finish it. Let me finish
okay.
it. So because I have the opinion that Trump is flaky, Trump doesn't want to be bogged down. Whenever he takes these military actions, he wants to be in and out.
That's
doesn't.
good.
He doesn't have the determination. He doesn't have the follow through. He doesn't have the patience, and he doesn't have the years because he's dying.
You would oppose it an occupation as well, though.
So,
If Trump came in and said, "I'm going to do a 10-year military occupation of Venezuela," you'd hate that.
So if he were going to, if he said, "We're doing the military occupation for the purposes of establishing, democracy in there," I would need to be convinced that they were going to support some institutions that were going to last. I'm not saying that I would support it on no evidence, right? I would want there to be some prospect of success, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Right. Because something that can happen when you intervene.
That's why I actually don't want US troops on the ground. Yeah.
Something that can happen when you intervene is you don't expect what's going to happen. And you actually cause either a power vacuum. For example, if people are unsure, like Machado, he comes out and says she doesn't have the support, even though she is popular. And so if he does that, I have no way to think that there's actually a seriously good prospect of success.
Trump actually said that the reason why they're not pushing for full regime change right now is because they learned from the experience of the de-Baathification in Iraq, where when the coalition authority came into Iraq,
then we're fucked. Because how are we going to have democracy?
It's possible that there will be a transitional period. It is very possible.
No, I'm not asking if it's possible. I do
think it's actually likely. And look, there are actually multiple cases that you can point to in the past, like 50 years, where the successful transitions from dictatorship to democracy actually took place kind of under hybrid regimes. You see that in Taiwan, where the KMT essentially was a hybrid. It was like basically a dictatorship, and it was like a hybrid transitional regime that eventually transitioned to democracy.
But it was kind of like an American proxy puppet guy.
But that is what I think Trump is trying to do in Venezuela.
He doesn't have that yet.
I think he's basically. I think by threatening the new leader of Venezuela, I do buy it, and I actually think it's just as much
the same people who are torturing, the same people who you think should have no moral consideration. You think that they're now under the...
I would, in my ideal world, I actually think... In my ideal world, they would put Machado in right away. But I understand that they can't have US troops on the ground. I think that's impossible politically. So I think this is the next best thing. There's a chance that he is able to pressure the Venezuelan regime to have like a 2-year transitional period where they eventually have free elections. I was talking to a Venezuelan friend today who fully believes that and thinks that the chances of a democratic transition...
I hope it's true.
I hope it's true.
I hope it's true.
I will say this.
We'll have what happened in Iran, or I hope it doesn't turn out like Libya. But imagine what happens in Iran if right now there are some reports that thousands of people have been killed.
Up to 10,000 potentially
in these protests. What happens if Trump doesn't do anything there?
That would be a disaster.
Hangs them to dry.
That's horrible.
They're worse off.
Yes, I agree. That would be one of the worst ever.
Our
Trump
experience
actions
with Trump is he has no follow through. He doesn't commit in these long, bogged down struggles internationally. He just wants the easy win and declare victory. He doesn't have the stomach, the kind of gravitas, the kind of seriousness it takes to do the liberal hawk neocon policy if it were even legal or justified to do in the first place.
He's trying to... I believe that they're trying a different model in Venezuela. I can fully see how it could easily become a disaster if there was boots on the ground and it was a long-term occupation. Clearly, America, after Iraq and Afghanistan, Americans rightfully do not have the stomach for these types of long-term, drawn-out nation-building operations. That's a disaster. We don't want that.
And the American people didn't vote for that either.
Yeah.
If you want to go to your voting example.
Yeah, I know. So that's why I'm saying there shouldn't be US troops on the ground in Venezuela. Let's see if they can pressure the regime over the next year to create a transition.
He's already distracted.
I don't think...
He got his pound of flesh.
Even if Trump's distracted, I trust people like Rubio. I genuinely think Rubio won't allow that. I don't think Rubio will allow a fundamentally communist regime to keep power in...
Rubio's a hack. He'll do whatever.
I like Rubio the most in the administration, and I actually believe in him.
You would.
I like Rubio because he's kind of the most classic sort of neocon of them all. He's the most classic hawk type.
But he's willing to play ball with depravities and sending these people to torture dungeons and deporting Mahmoud Khalil, which I know you support.
Khalil is a different case because Khalil was supporting pro-Hamas activities in America.
Where's the proof of that?
He was helping organize rallies that said like destroy the United States, etc. He was.
Yeah, because you don't think people have free speech rights. How would you feel if an American grabs you and say, "Oh, we don't like what you're," but Biden comes and grabs you. We don't like Drew.
But Pisco, there's a difference between okay, I think nobody should ever be deported if they're just like, I support Palestine over Israel. That's fine. That's free speech.
Yeah, but you don't have evidence of him saying things I support Hamas.
He was like the number 2 in that protest organization.
Yeah, but you don't have evidence of him saying we support Hamas.
Well, he went.
So you have to do this guilt by association.
He went on Ezra Klein's show and he defended October 7th. So I think he's a piece of shit.
Wait, what did he say?
He said that October 7 was a breath of fresh air. It was a great moment for the Palestinian people.
I'll have to watch it. I don't know.
Freedom. It was like he basically said that it was a prison break. That's what he said. He was like a full apology. He said it's a prison break.
Hang on a second. So it depends how you characterize it. I'll watch it. I'll see what he says. I want to be clear though to my audience and everyone, even if it's the case that he said I support the Hamas killers, and even if he says
why
I hate Jews, even if he were to say that.
Why would you want somebody like that in that country if they're not a citizen?
Because I believe that the First Amendment of our country doesn't refer to citizens. It says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech.
Okay, so I'm here on a tourist visa for a week. If I went into Times Square and just started...
Yes, I think you have First Amendment rights. That doesn't mean that your rights are the same as citizens. It doesn't mean your rights are the same as citizens in that respect. There's unresolved case law on that. And there are at least some respects where maybe it's different. But at a bare minimum, the mere expression of your view, I think the First Amendment protects.
I do want to say to the chat, I saw Pisco's law degree and I did actually respect it. I put too much shit on it in the past. I trolled him a bit too much. It's a very good law school, I have to say.
It's okay.
I do actually respect it. I do respect it.
Do you understand? The reason why I don't try to, people will accuse me, oh, you do the lawyer thing. I don't try to marshal a credential for an argument. I think that if you want to make an argument that it's legal to invade Venezuela, you should be able to make that argument. And I'm not just going to say, maybe if you say some patently absurd things, I'll be like, well, did you study this at all? Like maybe something like that. But I don't think that it's for me to just boost.
No, look, I respect that. I respect that.
I respect that's worth.
Listen, I respect that, and I don't really like. I don't like credentialist types people. So I respect that. But so what where
do we want to go? Okay, so we have a kind of.
How long have we been going for?
We've been going for a while.
I do have to.
So let's finish off on this. Talk to me about the people in the online debate influencer space politically.
Yeah.
Who are you looking to? Who do you watch? Who are the people that you respect on these issues on American politics?
Okay, that's actually a good question. I'm trying to think. Look, I like the Manhattan Institute. I like Daniel DiMartino. I saw him today. Good guy. I like the Manhattan Institute. They're doing good work. Because there are conservatives in America who they don't support every single thing that Trump says or does, and I respect that.
Do you support Elon?
Yeah, I do like Elon. I think Elon.
How? The guy's a fucking weirdo.
Elon basically improved my life massively.
By what?
By buying Twitter. He massively helped my life. I honestly think if Elon had not done that, it'd be a darker world, because I learned so much stuff. I learned about, for example, the grooming gang. This was how we first met each other and had that big fight. Yeah. I never knew how bad the grooming gang situation was in Britain until I saw uncensored information about it on Twitter, which probably would have been censored under the previous administration of Twitter. And I didn't realize that there were literally atrocities. Basically, they were atrocities.
But I don't want to hear you talk about anti-Semitism then, because the guy stands AFD. The guy
I don't think it's anti-Semitic.
But you think Hassan is?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Here's an actual fact, right? A logical outcome of Hassan's belief is that millions of Jews be killed, whereas that is not a logical outcome of any of Elon's beliefs.
I'm not sure if the populist right-wing governments of Europe take power. Who knows?
You think the AfD want to kill millions of Jews? I don't think that.
I'm not sure.
I think there are bad.
I'm not sure.
There are bad factions of the AfD that I don't like, and I would disavow, the more crazy faction of the AfD. But I don't think it's right to say that they're literally a Nazi party.
In terms of millions of Jews, I believe the only place where the populations are that high are in Israel itself and in America. So.
Well, look. Hassan Piker believes that Zionists are justified military targets. And that basically means that millions of Jews would be killed.
I think that's crazy. You can
be a
Zionist in America. Did he say any Zionist?
Well, he was talking about October. He was talking about October 7. He said that they were in Israel proper. It wasn't an attack on settlers in the West Bank. It was an attack on Israelis in villages around Gaza.
So any ideological Zionist in Israel is what.
That's what he said, and that's like
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I think it's horrible.
Well, wait, do you disagree that Hassan believes that, or do you disagree with that?
I think that take is absurd and crazy and fucked up.
Sorry, are you saying that Hassan doesn't believe that, or are you saying that you're agreeing with me that it's a bad view to have?
I didn't hear him say that. Okay. I don't doubt that he said it. I'm just saying
okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
If he said that, I disagree with it strongly.
That all I'm saying here, right, is like, if you actually just if you just go through as a logical consequence his beliefs, he believes that ideological Zionists inside Israel are like justified military targets, and that basically puts millions of people
killed.
Well, he defended October 7, and so that's a logical outcome of his belief.
He said that October 7 was good?
He said that in the context of defending his friend who fully celebrated October 7, and Ethan Klein came up and he said, how could you say that when there were kids that were killed on it? And he said, well, babies can be settlers too. So it was like he's never fully said kill all Israelis. He never said that.
He's like intimating towards it?
Yeah, he just like hints at it.
Okay.
But I think it's pretty obvious that he's
all right. In terms of conservative media, give me one other MAGA influencer that you actually respect. Do you respect any of them? Come on, how do you? These people are fucking. They're lol cows. They're liars. No, they're professional liars.
I'm trying to think.
Hang on, yourself among them. Unless
hang on. I'm trying to think about this. Like, look, I like Joe Lonsdale. I like Joe Lonsdale. I like.
You like this motherfucker from England? Who's the guy? He's arrested. Fuck.
Are you thinking about Tommy Robinson?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, you like him, don't you?
I would say critical support. I'd say critical support. I don't agree.
What does critical support mean? It means
like I'm just taking the piss because like there's that retarded concept that leftists love to do. Like every time it comes to like a disgusting depraved regime, they go like, "Oh, well, critical support to fucking like
so it's
Pol
a
Pot."
meme.
No. Look, I don't agree. What my official stance is, I don't agree with everything they've ever said or done. But I think that they are directionally correct.
Okay, in terms of...
I think like Tommy Robinson is directionally correct that migration to Britain has been too high and there are parallel societies within Britain and Islamists represent a major threat to Britain.
Okay.
I disagree with him when he says that like all of Islam... Because Tommy Robinson goes further and he says that like he says that he's at war with Islam. I disagree with that rhetoric.
You do? Okay.
I think you should distinguish...
Is Islam at war with us? Do you believe that?
No, I don't. I always try to distinguish between Islamism and Islam.
Okay.
And I do believe that there are Muslim moderates who reject extremists. I have been disappointed though, because I do unfortunately see time and time again a lot of moderates constantly making apologia for extremists.
Okay, some rapid fire, and then we'll end it off. In terms of based liberal left wing people that you follow, present company excluded, who are those people that you?
I shouldn't name them because they'll all get cancelled because I say
why?
Them.
Why do you say that?
Oh, you know, actually,
cancelled. Who's going to cancel?
Who would? You know, I will say there are actually two really good accounts that about the conservatives that you were pointing out to me before. The Count Wanye, he's a really smart guy. And I think he's like a critical supporter of Trump. And then also the Count Hamish Alcorn is a very smart guy.
Don't know him. Is there X accounts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
give me the liberals.
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 Okay, like liberals that I still really like Noah Smith. I still really like Armin Domaluski. They were always nice to me. I don't want them to get cancelled. They would obviously strongly disagree with my Trump takes and everything. Okay. So don't go cancelling them because they haven't done anything wrong and they would disavow my support.
What about Ezra? What about Nate Silver?
Look, I really liked Ezra Klein for so long, and I was really disappointed to see him kind of like sort of like do apologia for Zoran. So that was a big. Believe it or not, that was a big
Zoran. Why though? The guy's like.
Believe it or not, Ezra Klein's sort of like saying, "Oh, Zoran's not that bad." Because he still wanted to get invited to all the lefty parties in New York City. That actually killed me. I fully loved Ezra Klein before that.
You don't know that that's why he's doing it. I mean, Ezra talked shit about Biden earlier on, and he lost a lot of friends for that.
I don't know. I think honestly, there's a lot of like, look, when you're like, okay, Ezra Klein's not a tanky. I believe that.
Of course not. Yes.
Of course not. I believe that I believe maybe Zoran is not a tanky today, but I think he spent a long time as a tanky. I think like back in 2020, you could probably say that.
Like
Zoran
Bernie kind of was, he went to Cuba and you still respected him?
I was a lefty then. So when I respected him.
So do you think Bernie sucks now?
Yeah, I strongly disagree with Bernie now. Like when I was like 15, I liked Bernie. I'm not a socialist, you know.
What about Hillary? You like Hillary more now?
Not really.
Why? She's a liberal hawk.
I mean, I agree with her on the liberal hawk stuff.
Then what do you disagree with her on?
Domestic policy.
Namely what?
Like Hillary's now at the point where she's basically like abolish ICE.
Okay, but you understand that doesn't mean abolish the police. That just means ICE is going around right now infringing on all of our civil liberties.
But I don't.
So please try to have some fucking respect
but I don't,
for Americans in America who are saying, fuck ICE, we want it gone. Too many abuses.
Get rid of it. I don't trust. Okay, like there's two different arguments here, right? Like someone could say they disagree with ICE as it currently exists as an agency, and they would reconstitute a new agency for immigration enforcement.
That's what we say.
Look, I strongly disagree with that stance, but at the same time, I can at least understand it because you're at least saying you do agree in principle with immigration enforcement. What I dislike though is I think that there is a tendency on the left where they actually would not even reconstitute a new border agency. They actually almost want to just completely.
Yeah, I never hear this true because they always will say, yeah, like put it in the hands of the the DOJ like it used to be, or give it to CBP or.
I don't know. I don't trust. I'll be honest. I don't trust that like Ilhan Omar or like AOC would like to reconstitute a new border enforcement authority.
I think that,
and I think that they would basically. I think if AOC was president, she would de facto legalize illegal immigration. To
dude,
America. Do you think there would be any deportations to AOC?
Yes,
I doubt it strongly. I strongly doubt it. I do strongly.
Every Democratic president has deported hundreds of thousands.
But there's now so much negative polarization against what Trump is doing that I think the next Democratic president will basically want a full open border.
You say that, but Biden didn't do that.
Biden almost let in a full open border.
Why do you buy these lies?
There were like 10 million people who came in, man.
That doesn't.
That's a lot of people.
That's not what open borders means.
Like it was very open for a long time.
What you just mean is millions of people illegally immigrated, but that doesn't mean the border is
a very
open.
high rate of illegal immigration. Very high rate.
Okay, so we had an open border now because some are coming in, right?
No, it's like the closure.
Well, some are coming in, right?
It's different. Okay, Pisco, do you really think that Trump's border enforcement is not harsher than Biden?
I agree it's much harsher. I'm just asking, what do you mean by open borders?
I think, like, okay, I understand that Biden didn't sit down and write a pen saying it is now an open border.
He did the opposite. He closed the border illegally, and I condemned him for that.
All I'm saying... Okay, well,
I did. No, that's my consistency. Okay. I know you don't care about U.S. law, and you just proved it. Because you don't care about the law, because you don't care about democracy.
Anyway, it's getting late. Anyway,
I know.
But I think, for all intents and purposes, he allowed so many illegal immigrants into the country that it was almost like de facto. They were not fully policing the border. And there were scenes like, for example, when there was a large volume that were trying to cross the river, and they literally brought in machinery to rip down this sort of like defensive infrastructure.
You're mischaracterizing that. All right,
Actually, how would you characterize?
So they've already entered into America, and DHS has an obligation to process them. And using those barricades in that moment actually prevents the DHS from doing their job because they need to apprehend them.
Had they actually crossed the border at that point?
Yes, the border is in the middle of the Rio Grande, and when they cross it, they're past the international border in that respect. And the Texas government, state government, want to talk about insurrections. They were trying to obstruct the federal prerogative in apprehending these people.
Why do you have to accept people when they get to the border?
It's the law. You have to process them if you want to deport them. You don't just get no due process, right?
But by definition, crossing illegally is illegal.
I know. That doesn't mean that things. Can you kill them? Or that be illegal?
I don't agree.
So just because someone does something illegal doesn't mean you can't do illegal things to the person who did something illegal.
Okay, but here's the problem, though, Pisco, and you understand this as well as I do.
Law, yeah.
No, you understand this as well as I do. If just say theoretically 10 million people cross the Rio Grande and they're like sitting like 1 meter inside the United States.
Yes, you should follow the law. Yes, you should follow the law.
Okay. The problem, you know as well as I do, though, that there are not enough immigration judges to actually end up processing them. So the de facto outcome is that they're essentially illegal forever.
No, you should pass the bipartisan border bill that provided for increase in funding for DHS and for immigration judges. But instead, what we're getting now are bloated expenditures on ICE Gestapo tactics. And now there is a taboo against ICE, and it's hurting them. And now they're infringing on American civil liberties.
Okay, here's a good question. In Australia, we've got a very left-wing government in Australia right now, Albanese. So there are 100,000 people.
Come on, he's not that left.
I'll tell you. So there are 100,000 people in Australia right now who have been ruled, like they've come to Australia legally, they've applied for refugee status. There were already court hearings that denied them refugee status, and the government still just lets them stay in the country. Would you say, in theory, these people who have actually had their refugee status rejected should be deported?
Well, I would need to know. I would need to know the other basis of their staying, because sometimes there's other forms of lesser relief than asylum. For example, withholding of removal in American context, and
in Australian,
there's a convention against torture.
Look, in the Australian case, there are actually 100,000 people who have been ruled like they have no legal status in the country, and they've already been ruled that they should be deported, but they just don't get deported.
I don't know Australian immigration law. I will say, if they have no entitlement to be there, so except for extreme cases of humanitarian or integration, there are some even under American law discretionary relief that can be given to people on the basis of very close ties to America.
Fair enough.
They're cancer patients, stuff like that.
Look, I think in isolated extreme cases, yes, I agree with you.
But in general, I think if you violate the laws, we should enforce the laws by and large, and we should make it so that
would you accept that there is an increasingly large section of even 10% that basically think that there's that slogan, for example. The slogan that says no human being is illegal, like that sort of implies that you can't even have immigration law at all.
I think there's probably a significant percentage, by which I mean greater than 5% of Democrats who think something like we should let everyone in. Okay.
Well, that's kind of the message behind the no human. I know,
but there's also crazy people who are more significant than Republicans who think we should keep everyone out. That's, in my opinion, just as crazy to have complete autarky. I don't want full autarky. Crazy. I don't want full autarky. So
I think some level of immigration is good for.
We have crazy. That's what I mean. Like there's a parity of craziness in terms of complete open borders, whatever. Last question, and then we'll get a closing one. Who are the worst political influencers? Give me 3.
I think the worst right now: Hassan Piker, Nick Fuentes, and I'm trying to think of the third one. Could I just give those 2? Because I think the reason why I pick those 2 is they represent extremes of both the left and the right. And I genuinely believe that for both of them, if they were to get power, they would kill millions of people.
Okay. Well, Drew, I'll give you your final word. I want to say thank you. I know we disagree very strongly.
Yes.
I do want to say, though, Drew was a complete gentleman in terms of coming to New York. I hope he has a good trip. I hope he has a safe trip. And I hope he enjoys the protections and liberties that this country gives him while he's a guest.
I have actually genuinely believed that. I've been amazed how beautiful America is, and I genuinely think you have a lot more freedom in America, which I think is great.
And based. Any final words from you?
Look, I do want to thank everybody for having me on, and I want to thank Pisco. He's been very gentlemanly, and look, we have strong disagreements, but look, when you do it in person, it's a lot easier. Yeah. You don't want to be mean in person as much.
And by the way, there's not a ton of room, and so it's a little awkward to just be staring at each other's eyes.
Yeah, I know. No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. But I didn't want to necessarily look into each other's eyes. But look, it's been a good conversation. And I appreciate it. And look, I want to make clear, right? I hate the communists. I hate the people who literally want to kill me. But I regard somebody like Pisco, even though we have strong disagreements, I regard somebody as Pisco as a legitimate good form of political opposition that should exist. I believe in freedom. I do believe in political opposition, etc. What I don't believe in is just the extremes where it's literal jihadists or literal communists who just want to murder me. That's where I want the Lee Kuan Yew solution. But somebody like Pisco, we can have very strong disagreements on all sorts of things under the sun.
Superman.
And I do believe, Superman. But I do believe that it should still be protected under free speech concept. It's just literally at the point where somebody is wanting to mass murder people. That's where I think, they should
draw the line.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pisco. It was actually a very interesting conversation. I actually think it's good. When you do it in person, it's a lot more good faith. A lot more I know in our previous ones, when you're just doing it, it's way more heated when you're not doing it in person. I'm actually very surprised that I ended up
questions. Can you take a couple of questions?
Yeah, we can do a couple. We can do 3 or 4. Yeah,
3 or 4 questions. All right, we'll see the questions, and you can pick 2. I'll pick 2 or 1.
Okay.
And we're waiting for you guys to give some questions.
Did you learn anything? I'll answer that. Right? Did I learn anything? I do learn something from Pisco. When you have debates like this, it does sharpen your. It forces you to sharpen your own thought, and there were some. What color is red? Yeah, blue. That. But I think it's good when you have debates like this. It forces you to contemplate deeply, and I do think Pisco has some semblance of a point in the sense that I don't want Trump to just go fully illegal, acting completely with regard to the law. I don't want that. I want the president of the United States to still act within the bounds of the United States Constitution, and so. I think that Pisco is sometimes too alarmist with this stuff, but I do agree in general with that sort of thing.
No, appreciate that. This is a question, femboy or tomboy. Do you think that you support trans rights, right? You've always have, right? Or not?
Oh, look, I'm not against transgender people necessarily. I don't believe in drag queen story time. I think when it comes to children transitioning, that's a different question. Children, these treatments are irreversible, and there are cases where people have wanted to transition back and they can't because the treatment is so strong. So look, I would say you just have to be very sensible about it. I think when you've got minors, medical interventions for minors are a very big thing. But look, if somebody's an adult, I'm not going to say that adults should not be able to live according to their own things as long as they're not harming
and
other
not
people.
be discriminated.
I don't believe in discrimination or bullying people.
What is a leftist? Definitional question, I guess.
What is a leftist? That's a good question. A leftist is somebody who, I don't know, would probably favor a more equal society over an unequal one.
So you're a leftist. You believe in an unequal society?
Actually, that's probably a shit definition because that probably just makes basically that's like almost saying like anyone who is a good person should be a leftist. I don't know.
Base question.
Look. I was trying to be fair there because I didn't want to say like all leftists are mentally ill, communists, blah blah. I think
he was trying to throw a bone.
Look, there are different distinctions within leftism. There is, I believe, like a genuinely mentally ill faction of extremists who like just hate life and hate society, and like they want to just like tear down other people because they don't like society. I think that is another fact. I think like the moderate liberal faction, like they believe that they're trying to do good with progress and equality, etc. But there is a more malevolent faction, unfortunately, and that's the faction that I've always fought with.
Last two questions. First one is, do you believe in a white genocide or a white replacement happen in any part in the West?
I think that I think migration is occurring at a level that population replacement is actually occurring. But here's the difference. The traditional white genocide theory is like a conservative theory that is a conspiracy theory that's associated with the neo-Nazis, and their whole idea is that the Jews are purposely trying to kill all white people. I think that's retarded. I don't believe that. I think in a lot of cases it's not even necessarily. I think in a lot of cases like governments are just doing this because there's low fertility and they want to get workers in because it boosts the economy in an artificial sugar hit type way. But then there is also another faction that I think there is anti-white sentiment and anti-white hate out there in the world. I think there are leftists who do genuinely think that like I think there are some leftists who believe that if you have a non-white majority in America, then you will solve racism. And I think that's actually very silly because I think that actually by forcing major demographic changes in very short amounts of time, I think you actually raise the saliency of race as a massive issue. Okay.
And the last question is, most based US president of all time, most based Australian prime minister of all time, and your favorite black person of all time.
That's actually a good question. Okay, most based president of all time. That's actually so hard. That's a really difficult one. Most based American president. There are genuinely so many different American presidents that I admire. Maybe Lincoln, because obviously, he did keep the
Strong
Union.
Choice.
He kept the Union in check, and that's an amazing achievement. To win the Civil War, it is an amazing achievement. I think Lincoln is definitely up there.
Gough Whitlam for prime minister?
No, definitely not Gough Whitlam. It's hard though because there's not that many prime ministers that I like in Australian history.
Or is it Curtin, or is it
Yeah, look, I'd say maybe Curtin, because he shepherded Australia through World War II, which is amazing. And he was a great Labour prime minister.
And Paul Keating, Russia.
No, I hate Keating so much
because of Russia.
Look, he's a massive apologist for China now, and China,
yeah.
And his whole thing is that he thinks that Australia should be an Asian country because it should be a Mexican. Yeah, he has this thing because his family were Irish. He has this really massive chip on his shoulder about Anglos, and I think Keating has this like weird.
So you think he's like a race guy? He's like okay.
He is pretty openly.
What do you think of Scott Morrison?
I think he was an ineffectual prime minister.
What are the Liberals going to do in the future? The coalition. I mean,
they're in a terrible position right now. I think the only actual chance that they have is if Andrew Hastie comes in and he leads he's a bit like Abbott in that he would take the party to the conservative right, and I think that could potentially take a lot of vote. At the moment, the big problem for the Liberals is half their base have deserted them to One Nation, which is kind of like the Reform UK style.
Pauline Hanson.
Yeah, it's a MAGA style
what do you
party.
Think of Pauline Hanson?
Look, I don't endorse Pauline. There's been a lot of moments over the years where Pauline has done and said bad things. I don't endorse Pauline, but I understand why there's a lot of people going to. I understand why there's a groundswell for Pauline right now, and it's because the Liberal Party is not talking about immigration whatsoever.
And the last question.
And the immigration, people don't realize how bad it is in Australia. Like we're literally adding 3 to 4% of the population every single year. Like literally on a year-by-year basis, we're adding 3 to 4% of the population in terms of population growth. And that is such a massive level of population growth that it's put so much strain on infrastructure and housing. My favorite black person. I That's a good question, actually. My favorite black person.
But while you think about it,
I actually love black people.
Home and away or neighbors?
You know what's funny? I actually love black people.
Home and away or neighbors? I know you love black people.
Neighbors, probably. But I actually haven't watched any either. I love black people. Black people are great. Oh, who's my favorite black person? That's a good question. But we love black people in the Drew
There's
Cavalry.
so many of them. This is like you're like.
What
book are you reading? I don't know.
But I genuinely. The funny thing is, I've always loved African American culture when I was growing up. I loved hip hop. I loved that stuff. So my favorite black American, probably Tyler Creator.
Interesting.
He probably wouldn't like me because my views are conservative, but I was a Tyler Creator fan from the age of 10 years old in 2011. I was a fan of his when he was doing all the horrorcore shit, and I actually stayed with a fan of his all this time to now he's doing this sort of progressive LGBT type pop. He's a great man.
Better than Ye. Oh, did you see the picture of the anti-Jew alliance? It was
that was extremely. Look, the sad thing is, if you asked me this question like 4 years ago, prior to Kanye's whole Nazi thing, I would have said Kanye because I loved Kanye so much. Kanye was like my favorite ever rapper growing up, and I based a lot. I was inspired so much of my personality from Kanye. I admired the man so much, and I still admire his creative energy. But I think, unfortunately, he did go through a very extremely bad mental health period, and that caused a lot of. He lashed out in very destructive ways. What was the other? My favorite president, my favorite prime minister.
I think
you know what's funny? You said Curtin.
Yeah,
Curtin would be so cancelled today because he was like white Australia. Not that I'm endorsing white Australia policy.
You have to do contemporary standards. Same thing with like Jefferson. Now he owns people, all right.
Yeah,
and
I mean even Lincoln kind of had like he obviously emancipated the slaves and stuff like that, but he
was more focused initially on keeping the union together,
and he for some years he thought that the African Americans should go to Liberia and stuff, right?
They floated this for a while, yeah. So
I mean even he by contemporary
Washington owned people, and so I think that people shouldn't take this like extreme relativistic look at their historical figures and tear down all the statues. Yeah. But I think they should tear down some of the statues.
What statues?
I think we should tear down the Robert E. Lee statues. I think we should.
Oh, look, I don't agree with the Southern statues.
Why not?
No. I'm saying I was actually. Oh. I'm not saying tear them down, but I do think that they're distasteful.
Yeah. So like, I basically think those people are traitors, and we shouldn't make monuments to traitors who tried to destroy. The country.
I still. Maybe put them in museums and stuff like that. I saw when they melted...
but put them in a museum somewhere. But like
I don't know. I saw that. I saw that time when they chopped off the head and then melted it down. Like I thought that was a bit gratuitous. Like you could just put it in a museum and you'd be like, this was.
And we're not talking about illegally taking down statues. We wanted to go through the right process, don't we, Drew?
So true.
Yeah, so true.
Look. I don't like the iconoclasm. I think maybe they should be in museums and stuff like that. I don't like communists like ripping them down and then burning them all up and everything, but I do find them a little bit distasteful because I agree. Like the South did not fight for good causes in World War II. In the Cold War, sorry, in the Civil War.
The Cold War.
Sorry, I'm tired. In the Civil War.
The last two questions.
Okay.
Say one nice thing about Hassan Piker and one nice thing about Nick Fuentes.
Oh, that's actually a tough one. Okay, actually, this is pretty easy.
Challenge you.
Look, Hassan Piker is charismatic. And he, good-looking bloke. Even though I'm not gay, I'm just saying. Unfortunately,
he's okay.
Unfortunately, look. Unfortunately, he's a good-looking bloke. I hate the guy. That's obviously why he gets the support because he's like a good-looking bloke. Like,
you think it's unfortunate because what you want to fuck him?
No, I'm fully straight. I think that's disgusting. I think
why is gay sex disgusting?
Because I'm straight. I don't want to. I'm not.
What do you like? Skip over like in Game of Thrones when they have gay sex? Do you skip it?
Listen, Pisco. I fully support the. I've got gay friends.
No, that's not what I asked.
Let me say this.
Do you skip the gay scenes in Game of Thrones?
Let me say this. I've got gay friends. They should have equal rights. I don't want to think about gay sex. I don't like thinking about it. Why would I think about it? I'm not gay. I like straight.
I know that you're straight, but
you were asking me to think about sex with Hassan. That's fucked up to me. That's gross.
I'm not saying I'm asking you to think about it. I'm just saying is the reason that you're upset that he's attractive because you might think of him.
No, okay. That's disgusting. Right. Dude,
it's not disgusting. It's
beautiful. If you ask the average gay person, what do you think of straight sex? They're gonna think that's gross too.
But they wouldn't turn off the movie and close their eyes when straight.
I don't know. I can't remember watching Game of Thrones gay sex scenes.
You've never seen a gay movie before? Like
Brokeback Mountain. But that wasn't a gay movie.
Listen, have you
Brokeback Mountain was just two MAGA patriots who were lonely in the mountains. They were not gay. Our Brokeback Mountain friends.
and Fuentes, of course, you like him because he's straight as well.
The best thing I can say about Fuentes is he is my favorite Mexican straight person. But no, to be fair to Fuentes, look, I hate the guy's politics. He is unfortunately very funny.
Yeah, sometimes the bad ones are funny, but
it is unfortunate. Like I hate Fuentes. I hate everything he stands for. But I've seen sometimes like he's made some pretty funny jokes. Yeah. Like for example, when he made that joke where he was like, I have to, like when he was saying like he hated his own audience so much that he wanted to join the Jews in oppressing the Goys. I thought that was pretty funny to be honest. So sometimes he's unfortunately funny. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Drew. Appreciate it.
I'll say one good thing about Pisco. Yeah. He's actually very respectful in person. So.
I appreciate that.
I will say he is an intelligent person. I do respect his law degree. I saw that it was from a very prestigious university.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
A pleasure to have you here, and good conversation. And yeah, we'll keep in touch. And
God bless everybody,
the audience, and
God bless everyone, even the haters,
especially the haters.
Thank you. God